You just sent, oh, okay. All right, so evening, everybody.
Evening.
Hello. Evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's dive into our workshop. The first half of our workshop is our ADU ordinance, and the second half will be the 517 West Main proposal. So let's dive into ADU, and Attorney Dittman, I saw that you just sent something over. Do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, I'll kick us off here. So this is about really changing the ADU ordinance to be compliant with the change in state law. I take the direction from the Board of Trustees on what you'd like to see in terms of the changes. I greatly apologize. I just learned that it was not as part of the online agenda materials. And so I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk you through some of the big picture items on this one. There's no real need to get into the weeds on this. Just really talk about some of the big concepts we were discussing the last time this came up, and whether or not what we're proposing is consistent with what you want before we bring this forward for our first reading. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, Dolores, can you enable me to share my screen, please?
Oh, yes.
There we go. Let me zoom in on that.
Can you make that a little bigger?
Yeah, I'll try my best. How's that?
Dolores, maybe you could close the participant panel there. That might give us a little bit more room.
Still kind of tiny, huh?
He will have to enlarge it, and he can close the one on the left-hand side. Brandon, can you close your navigation? And then enlarge.
Probably.
And Zoom just crashed too. Let me pull it up. On my end, it was fully zoomed in on one page, but
You want me to try with your mind?
You gotta open it in Word.
Yeah, you have to download it and open it. Yeah.
Oh, that's better.
There you go.
Can you see it now? Okay.
Yep, okay.
Okay. Excellent.
Close that
Um,
one.
I don't know. Yeah, I could give me Zoom crash warnings, but hopefully we can get through this. So the first kind of the big concept items we talked about, which is one of one of the reasons why we had to amend this was under
Oh, he froze. Give him a minute.
It's going.
He froze.
I know, but I wonder why. I haven't had that
He
for a
said
long
he's
time.
having trouble on his end.
Right.
Oh, there he is.
There it is again.
Brandon, you're connected. Okay, can you hear us?
I can now. Can you maybe kick the other Brandon, the black screen Brandon?
Take him off.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be able to.
I can't because I think you're the host.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
There you go.
Oh, no.
Okay.
there we go.
Try this
Okay.
again.
I'll try this one more time. Dolores, can you make me, this Brandon, can you allow him to share screens, please?
There we go.
Okay. Third time's a charm, right? Okay, can we see that?
Yes.
Okay, I have not got any big crash warnings, so hopefully it's stable this time. And so I don't know. Oh, it's got another one. So hopefully this won't touch anything. I was mentioning one of the first things we need to do for compliance was to change out the owner occupancy requirements that currently exist in the town code. And so my, solution to that.
Oh, shoot.
It's gonna be long. He's back.
You're back on.
You're back, but muted.
We're all looking at this online.
Yeah.
Can you just audio it?
Yeah. someone else can share it, or if you can look through your own copies I sent out. I apologize, this is not working tonight.
It happens.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and start. I'll try to share mine.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So as I've been trying to say, and I don't know to what extent you've heard it, the first kind of big picture change that I did was to really amend the owner occupancy requirements that exist in the code. Like now we have a pretty extensive set of regulations about how the owner has to be occupying the primary unit. They can only be gone for so long. They have to provide notice to the town in some instances about being gone, and none of that is really enforceable under the new rule that came out, the new statute. And so the way I've amended this based on our previous discussion was to only require owner occupancy during the application and then not after that period. And I guess the decision point here is whether you even want an owner to be occupying the primary residence during the time of application or not, as you don't have to, but that is the one area where we're allowed to regulate still.
That's like, actually, got the minutes of what we discussed last time. It's one thing we didn't discuss. I don't, unlike for short-term vacation rentals, I don't see why that's important for an ADU. Somebody that owns a rental house in Lyons and wants to put a second small rental ADU behind it, which we will now allow. Why shouldn't they be able to do that? What difference does it make if you're adding like a second rental unit on your property where you actually live in the first one? Unlike short-term vacation rentals where you have that, but because there you want somebody there to monitor the you don't want to rent out a new house. So
Yeah.
I don't see why it's necessary.
I would say it could deter investor only properties. And I think that is something that we want to encourage, is for residents to develop ADUs versus an investor buying a small house on a lot and building an ADU and never living there. Trustee Henry?
I agree with Trustee Browning to extent, because I've talked to a number of people that, bought their first home and then they bought another one here in town and then they want to turn the other, maybe do an ADU on their property. And it just seems like if we remove that, I agree to keep, corporations from coming in and finding that. Because I think that's what the original intent of that rule was, but can we just say they need to be a Lyons resident or something to that effect? But not at the time of doing this.
I don't, that's a good question. Brandon, are we allowed to say that in order to apply for an ADU, you have to be a Lyons resident?
No.
We wanted to.
Yeah, I don't think, usually we can't distinguish among, residents and non-residents as an equal protection kind of issue.
Is there any other ways we can just qualify it with?
Yeah, what I was kind of thinking as the discussion was happening, that maybe, the owner doesn't have to reside in the principal residence, but just clarifying that the owner has to apply for it, not like or an authorized agent through some sort of signing. And that's the only other way I could, think about doing this.
Right, I get your point there, Roya, but I'm not sure if I have a big problem with outside investors creating new rental properties in Lyons. As opposed to, because they're gonna be long-term rentals. You can't use an ADU. And we decided to keep that prohibition. So if somebody who lives elsewhere, maybe they used to live here and they moved away and they've got a rental house. I know several people that fall into that. That's where, like David said, and they want to add an ADU to have more income from the property. I don't see a problem with it. And even if it was an investor did it, as long as it's a long-term rental, it's not displacing existing space.
No, and it could, there's no way of knowing that.
Yeah, I know.
There's no way of knowing that. So, I think if we want to encourage people to, be able to build a long-term life here, We should think about it. Okay, well, that's something we can talk about when we kind of get to discussion direction.
Okay, that's fine.
And principal there should be AL.
There should be a owner. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
People should be PAL instead of PLE.
Yeah, yep, yeah, principal, yep, understood. I'll fix that. The other change, which relates to, what we're doing tonight with the occupancy limitations, just make a reference back to the occupancy shall be, the occupied person not in excess of the amount permitted, pursuant to the new code amendment. And that, I mean, right now we have a one family limitation here, which obviously is not permitted under the current statutory scheme, given the changes.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna move down to there's a lot of kind of cleanup stuff here. The original drafting kind of went back and forth between ADU and spelling it out, and so I changed that to make it consistent.
And so the limitation to the family, that's going away, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's been striked out. It's now just a reference back to what is on the agenda tonight, for the new occupancy limitation, which is based on only health and safety standards. And so really, really the fire code is kind of the one that's going to place a physical limitation on people residing in the residence. Any questions on that?
mm-mm.
Okay. I know based on our previous discussion, one of the bigger issues that the existing applications have is that a separate entrance being not on a street facing an exterior building facade. I just deleted that entirety from this draft rather than try to rework it in some way. I didn't know if there's I'm not a planner, I'm not a policymaker here. I'm just kind of trying to follow direction. There's another type of limitation on where the entrance needs to be that you'd rather have, rather than just deleting this requirement entirely.
Was there, I don't think anybody on this board drafted the original ADU ordinance. Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, it was because at that time, back in 2016, they didn't want it to look like R2s. And so they didn't allow them in the front because it would change the whole dynamic of the neighborhood to look like, R2s versus R1s. Brandon, would you be able to stop sharing so I can share mine?
Oh, I'm not sharing, but I'll
Thanks
try.
for the host.
That's what I recall from that. But we have had applications that wanted in the front, and yeah, I don't see any reason why anymore that's not an option.
Yeah, because essentially we're all R2 now anyway.
And I agree, there's only, even since then, there's been maybe 10 to 12 in the whole town, so I don't think it changes the character of the neighborhood. I don't think there's gonna be enough to change the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you for that. The next question I had, and a change that we didn't really, based on my review of my notes from our previous discussion, we didn't really talk about, was setbacks.
Yeah.
The existing code says that detached ADUs are considered accessory buildings, such are subject to accessory building setbacks. And what I added was that you may get a variance for changing that, because we're not allowed to do conditional use reviews anymore, and so that whole part of it came out. But I didn't know if you still wanted to maintain kind of the default being that you have to follow the accessory buildings setbacks, or whether you want to do something different. I thought it was appropriate to at least allow for a variance, even if we can't do a conditional approval.
And would that be an administrative variance or would that go to the Board of Adjustments?
I mean, I think my intent on here was to send to the Board of Adjustments, given that's how we usually do variances, but you could send it to the town administrator if you wanted to.
I'd prefer it stay with the Board of Adjustments.
Okay.
And, when we talk about a WUI code eventually, we're gonna have to think about this as well. Right?
Yep.
ADU setbacks, okay.
And Victoria, can you scroll down a little bit? We're a little bit lower, or the bottom of. Yeah, right there. That's where we're at right now. I'll scroll up a little bit. Sorry. There we go. So yeah, we're on the setbacks right there. It sounds like the way I have it drafted is fine for now. It's just kind of initial, kind of gut reaction to some of these things before we bring it forward.
Yeah.
The next one. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
The next one I had on here was, the sizing of the ADUs. What I have here is the ADU shall not be larger than the principal dwelling unit unless the principal dwelling unit is 800 square feet or less, in which case the ADU may be a maximum of 800 square feet. That was what I had written down, was what the language was, suggested at the last board meeting, but I want to make sure that, captured your intent, for the changes.
I think that's good. I think we need to keep the size limitation to hopefully keep rents somewhat less, I just said.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry.
Hearing no, hearing nothing further, move on to the next one, which was something we discussed a bit about whether you can have multiple ADUs on one lot. And we were using Trustees Hamrick's property as an example. I think we were discussing that. And so what I did was try to copy the board's intent from that discussion. That if you're under a half acre, then you get one. If it's more than a half acre, you can get an additional one. If you're 1 acre or more, you may get it more than two if you request it and the board of trustees permits it. And so that was a kind of like my distillation of what the discussion was, but wanted to, and I put some criteria of how that's evaluated that's further down, but I wanted to kind of, check out the concept with you guys, whether that sounded like the right idea.
I think in general, yes, it sounds like the right idea. Requesting more than 2 ADUs, I'm wondering whether that's a process that we would want to go from the PCDC and then the board instead of straight to the board. I'm curious to know what staff thinks about that too.
Mhm. I don't know that if it entails a zoning issue, or, you know what I mean? It's land use, I guess, but I think it has more to do with then being more like an R3 or higher. I guess that kind of is, and that is zoning, so I don't know, I think that's, I don't necessarily have a opinion right offhand. I can ask them, unless anyone else see something with that.
Well,
I don't think it should go to the board of trustees. I think it should be. Yeah, it needs to be an intermediate group. I think.
you don't think it should ever come to the board for approval?
Oh, I mean, if planning commission denied it and they wanted to appeal it, yes. But personally, I think there should be some form of a limit. If you have a 10-acre lot, let's say that, how many should, I don't know, is that a problem or not a problem?
So I have the stats here,
Okay.
the file you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
So, 840
Residents.
units in town, approximately 737 less than a half acre. So it leaves us 60, because there's a bunch, and also there's 60 that are more than a half acre, so just to put it in perspective.
You don't have greater than an acre, then there's not many.
Yeah, and then we go to an acre, which is what?
I guess it would somewhat depend too if they're zoned ag or they're zoned residential or, yeah, I don't know. That's worth thinking about.
I would think if they're zoned R1, they're probably smaller to begin with. The bigger ones are gonna be the estate.
Residential
And the ag.
and ag, but in ag, you wouldn't expect to have 5 houses on one lot.
The other reason that I wanted to go to the PCDC is to provide more of an opportunity for community input.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have any issue if you want to. I don't, Brandon, is there anything saying we can't send it to them?
Nope. No, we can certainly do that. I mean, what we're required to do is allow for one ADU in every residential zoning district. That's what, baseline we're required to do. The fact that we're allowing more than that is, it's within our discretion of how we do that.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, it sounds like the consensus is to make it so our recommendation to the Board of Trustees final decision. Is that what the board would like to see?
If I make a comment on the last one before we jump forward aside.
Briefly, yes.
So just so we're aware, I don't know the specific sizes, but with the 800 square foot limit, it, yeah, may make sense if you want to keep them smaller. But the one on Stickney that came forward and presented the one time, I don't know the specific size, but they might have a house right now that's 800 square feet. And they would like to make that house 1,200 square feet. They would like to then make a 1,000 square foot ADU. Their goal was to build their ADU, live in it, and then rebuild their house to be bigger than it was.
Right.
So again, just to keep that as what they were looking at, and is that a concern or not? And what size limit is 800 square feet about the size limit we want? Or do you want, is 1,000 square foot potentially possible too? So I wasn't gonna mention it, but thought I should then, if we're talking about.
Yeah. Thank you. Okey dokey.
Okay, and then I did some criteria on how the Board of Trustees, now PCDC, will evaluate the impacts. I thought, I'm not a planner again, so I'm kind of guessing here, but the impacts of additional ADUs and surrounding properties, compatibility with adjacent uses, and then of course, efficiency of utilities were kind of the three big ones I thought of. There's more criteria we think should be evaluated. I'm happy to add those. But those were kind of the big ones that came to mind when I thought about this.
Yeah, that would be interesting with more homes on a big acreage and running utilities and which don't have to pay for taps.
And of course,
Yeah,
again, that's another feature of the 800 square foot size, they keep utilities, bigger ADUs, you have more utilities.
well, and that kind of also begs the question, if people want to build more than one ADU, do we charge them a tap fee for the second ADU? Like first one free, but
Yeah, and that's not something I amended in this code. But I think
It's based on a meter, right? So if we're not adding a new water meter, we're gonna charge them the fee. Getting into the utilities then on that aspect would be a little bit more to think about if you want. Wastewater, we already have, each unit should pay regardless. Wastewater is set up a little bit different than water. And we see that the housing authorities, they have to pay based on how many units are in there, not that the water is based on the size of the tap going in. So if they have 4 units, are they gonna need a bigger water tap? In which case they would pay a fee because they need to get a bigger water tap just to come in. It's not gonna be a new water tap for the individual ADU. They're gonna say, well, we need to increase our 3/4 inch to a 1 inch, but then we're gonna split it 4 ways once it's inside.
I'm wondering now if this is something that we don't want the UEB to weigh in on.
On multiple units, maybe so. Because the whole philosophy in waiving tap fees for ADUs, if they were less than 800 square feet, it wasn't that much utilities, but I think you need to look at it differently if you had 3 800 square foot ADUs. Than just one.
And also the current rules saying you have to have sprinklers in your ADUs, then you have 4 units with sprinklers too, oh boy. So anyway, lots to think about.
We might need to look at the tap fee waiver provision. To say that our waiver of tap fees only applies to 800 square foot or less ADUs. And the potential waiver of tap fees on anything above 800 square feet would need to be reviewed by Board of Trustees, don't make it automatic.
Wow. That's interesting.
Okay, so there's still a lot to discuss there in the future on how to deal with those issues. The next one is parking. Right now we have a requirement of one off-street parking space for each ADU. What I did here is just kind of copy the state law where it says, you can create or designate one off-street parking space, which basically means if you have a garage and there's two spots in there and you only have, one dwelling unit, using one spot, then you can designate one as, solely for the ADU to comply with the requirements. And then the other thing is if, you're in a zoning district where there is no parking required, and then pursuant to state law, then no parking is required for an ADU application. And so all I did really was kind of mirror state law, but we can make it, less restrictive. You can say you don't need to bring any parking to the table if you want to do an ADU application.
A comment on the parking, while it is in the code and you probably do not need it separate. I would have it something that specifies that parking has to be legal parking. So they are aware somehow you can't park in the alley. Right, people do it, we know it's illegal and we have code compliance go out and try to take care of that. But I think making sure people are aware upfront, just because you put a garage that's an ADU, that does not mean you get to park in that alley. And people are not aware of it and.
That sounds like a code compliance
One
thing to
way.
me. It doesn't sound like something that needs to actually be in the ordinance.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
I
know
know
it's
what
there.
you're saying, one legal off-street parking.
Just to maybe right, putting it in when they apply for an ADU, it's just something in the flyer so they know.
We need to get going here. Remember that we're gonna be discussing this in depth later too.
You just real quick, you could add a parenthetical after the word carport there, but not in an alley. Just kind of a notice thing.
I mean, is there any situation where an alley parking spot would be allowed? That's the only question I have.
If it's off the alley, yes, but not on the alley.
Yeah.
So we have lots of parking off of the alley, but not in the alley.
Okay. Well, luckily that is mostly the last big change. The other big change, which is right below this, is it's kicking all these into administrative review, which we're required to do pursuant to the state law anyways. And taking some of the subjectivity out of that determination. I mean, really all we're allowed to do is compliance with the code, fire code, any other applicable state, local, federal regulations, and then architectural compatibility with any applicable design standards. That's about all the administrator is really allowed to do. And so taking out, some of the more subjective pieces of that, is what part of the amendments.
Which we really don't have for R1. Or really like R1 zones anyway, there's no architectural design standards. So there would be no applicable design standards for most of it.
Yeah, unless you're in the HOA areas, you probably, you would. So
There are issues with that, we put that in the ADU. Does they ever come up that this isn't architecturally compatible with the surrounding? Has that ever really been an issue?
Right, I don't remember being a problem with it. I think there's been questions. What does that mean? How does
Yeah.
somebody interpret it? But that's about it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's ever been that relevant, right?
It could come up if we go further with some historic regulations. But I don't think it has. Yet.
And so really the only other changes was just making it so tiny homes are now also an administrative review. Again, we're not allowed to do conditional reviews anymore on any of these. And then I kept it so that appeals were to the PCDC, which was the same as it was previously. So if the administrator denies you a permit, you can appeal it to the PCDC. But that's pretty much it in terms of major changes to this code. There's a few references.
You have a note in here under 19, asking if we still want to sunset.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that. I mean, if I recall correctly, we spent an awful lot of time talking about tiny homes and tiny homes on wheels, and then we had exactly one application and that was then withdrawn.
Yes, we've never had one.
So I'm not sure we need to spend a ton of time.
Except as we add lots now legally, those that were in HOAs that weren't possible before with smaller backyards. They might.
They might,
They might.
Let's move on.
Yeah, is there any initial thoughts on sunsets? I don't know. I know it's really early, but I can leave it in. You can always take it out when we discuss this next.
I think let's leave it in for now.
Okay.
And just that we'll talk about it.
Okay. I think at this point, what I'll do is I'll take this draft with some of the edits we did here tonight and clean it up, and then you'll see it, when it comes back through for the board of trustees on first reading.
Okay, and we do have a discussion direction item later in the meeting, so we might discuss it
This is good.
a little
Okay.
bit further too.
Does it have to go to planning commission?
It's in the zoning code, I think.
Yeah,
So,
that's why it's gonna be on the March 17th for
Yep.
first read.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, this will go to PCDC. After tonight, the draft ordinance will go to PCDC, then it will come to us for first reading. Okay,
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback.
yeah, thank you. All right, so let's move on to the second half of our workshop. See, Chris, you wanna come on up? Are you presenting tonight? What?
Is it Mike or Melissa first or me?
I don't, it's up to you guys.
You have to come up.
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky enough to be here in person, so I know you love standing at that place.
You can sit or stand. Okay.
Chris Lee, 621 First Avenue, Lions. Not here just to talk about 517 West Main Street, Lions. There's a portion that Lions Properties LLC owns, one of actually now 4 properties that the LLC owns. And there's a portion that we really don't utilize. It's what would be sort of the northeast portion of the property. The other portion is important to us in terms of storage, the laundry for Wecaster and just pretty much just business. So there's one portion that I've looked at subdividing, and it could be, I think, a minor subdivision. We can subdivide into 2 or 3. We'd retain the riverside for operations, and then what would be the northeast, we can split into 1 or 2. And the chance meeting with Mike Koenig is trying to, I guess, not solve, but find a solution for some, I guess, demands that town has. And so I guess I'm here, I'm like, I can either subdivide it into 2 or 3 and move on. But I've lived here for 20 years. I see the demand for housing. To me, it's sort of coincidental that we lost 32 homes in the trailer park, which is now Riverbend. And it's like, well, can we remedy that and put some units on 517? So for me, it's a financial decision, but then there's a part of me that I'd like to do something that, as I said, could result in some housing for town. And I won't say it's urgent, but I don't want to see this drag out for months and months and months and months. And I'd just like to see the appetite the town has for, I guess, rezoning a certain portion of 517 as a part of subdividing it as well.
That's great, thank you. And I think Melissa has the power.
Yeah, and evening, Mike, Melissa, John. I don't know who's up next who'd like to.
Good evening.
Yeah, well, we all speak as one unit since we're the same company. But I'll kick it off. Thank you, Chris. I think Chris and I met probably it was well over a year ago now that we started discussing ideas for the type of housing that we've heard is needed in town. And I think many of us met in the last workshop we had just before the holidays. And I personally, I live on Apple Valley Road, so I know intimately the type of housing that's needed in town. I have friends who wanted to purchase something in town, and there just wasn't the right the right fit. So they ended up, having to purchase something quite far away. So, as many of you know, I am the co-founder of Studio Shed and our recently newly launched division, which is Studio Home Pro, which is dedicated to multifamily development. And of course, I have my partners here on the line, Mark, Melissa, and John, with our from our development company, the Dutch Mountain Company. And we certainly know that we have a very competitive and high quality cost stack, if you will, in terms of the quality of housing that we can bring. So and in talking to Chris, I think there's ultimately, two paths there. It's larger single family homes, and hopefully, I think the better fit would be multifamily, which is, if you look at Lee Williams' property, we all know there's a big wait list in town for that type of housing. So with that said, we have a deck to share. Melissa, do you want to share that, or whoever can share it?
Victoria.
Oh, by the way, I would have loved to have been there tonight, but I'm turning 50 this week, and I decided I'm basically taking the week off, and I'm in Wisconsin right now, and it's like -20 outside. So that's where I decided to spend my 50th year of my life.
Well, Mike, I hope you get some birthday cheese curds.
There's been plenty of those so far. Yeah.
All right. Does that look better?
Yeah,
Great.
Looks great.
Great. Yes, well, thanks. It's great to be back to see your faces. Sorry, we're not there in person, but really have, a brief presentation as it relates to what we envision could be the highest and best use for this site, and would really love to get your feedback as it relates to some of these conceptual plans that we've provided. And we'd also like to talk through some of the hurdles as it relates to, impact fees, and just understanding how we can come at this potential project and really engage the residents and kind of hear from them as it relates to, wanting more transparency and really trying to deliver that middle of the road housing for, our nurses and teachers and first responders, and really getting that feedback from you as it relates to what this could look like, whether it's rental or for sale. So this is really more of a fact-finding mission, and we'd love to get that feedback. And as Chris mentioned, just love to understand kind of what that process looks like, and if there is a path to hopefully bring these housing units to Lyons quickly. So the first slide here we're showing is just a rendering, but I'll let Mike comment. He talked a little bit about the Dutch Mountain and Studio Home, but if you want to just give a little bit more of our spiel, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I think we touched on this just before the holidays, but I founded Studio Shed, Studio Home back in 2008. We have a 40,000 square foot factory in Louisville, which anybody's more than welcome to come and tour anytime. We are a one-piece flow manufacturer, Toyota Lean Manufacturing Systems, and so I think one of the things that's been very compelling and has helped our success is it's like Legos. It doesn't matter what size the unit we do, whether it's a 120 square foot backyard studio. Of course, we do a lot of ADUs. We've been doing that since 2009, before ADUs was a term. We've done 300 to 400 commercial projects. We built a 4,000 square foot school in California, early childhood center. And of course, we've done a variety of housing over the years. But I think one thing that's nice about what we're doing is it's very predictable. We are the architect, we're the engineer, we do that very efficiently. We have a one-step supply chain, so we're buying everything direct from the manufacturer. That, of course, helps save costs and and time. And I think the other unique thing that we're doing and we're seeing that's been very well received is the ability to tailor the programming. So a lot of the towns that we've been talking to, it's like, well, what do you have? What is it that you can do? And our answer to that is, well, what do you need? Do you need 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom? Do you need a mix of that? So it really doesn't matter to us. So as Melissa said, it's working together with the town and the people to bring the exact right programming to the town. So yeah, and we're we're right down the street, so that certainly makes it a lot easier than some of the larger projects that we've done out of state, literally, like in the Caribbean and Alaska and Hawaii and the remote rugged mountains of North Carolina.
And we included in the package here just an aerial of where this is located. I'm assuming, most of you know where this is, but we just wanted to make sure, especially as, we start talking about where this is located and the connectivity it has, to the downtown and, hopefully the walkability and connecting this area to that main street. So Mike, if you want to, I don't know if this is better, if I should go to the next one where we're showing the actual from the planning map.
Yeah, I think so. So the parcel that we're talking about is the north side of Chris's main event property. Um, any questions as far as exactly where this is? It's the dirt driveway just before the ridge, just before Indian Lookout, as you're heading out of town on the left. I believe there's in the violet color here. Sorry, the dark red is Riverview main. Yeah, thank you. The main events area, and Weecas is just on the north side of that, and then the violet is a mix of commercial and residential. And what we're talking about here is this parcel right there, that sliver there. And I think what's interesting about it, and when I was chatting Chris and I have talked about this quite a bit, is when you've got that rock band effectively protecting that whole area, and then all the trees along Main. So it's kind of nicely tucked back in there. And any questions as far as where we are in town?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great.
So as we had mentioned before, we've got a few options as it relates to the site plan. And as you look at this, along this, sorry, now you can see it. Along this side, there is quite a bit of topography we're working with. So we're working within kind of a confined area, but there's 3 different options here that we've tried to give a bit of a mix, changes in parking, changing in units, and 2 of them show 24 units and this one shows 27 units. So as Mike had mentioned before, it provides a mix of 2 and 1 bedrooms. And, as we talk about this a little bit more, and if the need is for more smaller units, working within this footprint to figure out what that best mix is.
Yeah, well, Chris and Andrew Bowen and I, and mostly my team, had put these together, but after getting some feedback, Chris had the idea to maybe move more of the parking to the northeast corner. I don't know. I mean, the programming is it's there's only so much you can do at the site, but we can certainly move things around and play around with the parking and
Yeah.
yeah. So that second option is 24 units. You'd have for example, 12 one bedroom, 12 two bedrooms for a total of 24
Yeah.
townhomes.
And a mix of 2-story and 3-story. So depending upon where they're located on the site, just being able to provide that mix and interest is available. So not much to see here, but I want to get to this next slide as Mike, if you want to just talk about, this is just, the pretty pictures, which we all like to see.
Yeah. So we often get questions like when folks come to our website, studioshed.com. A lot of our products are that you see are very, West Coast facing. We, in terms of the exterior aesthetic, we can kind of do anything. So here's just a couple of examples. But if it's a mining vernacular with rusted metal and gable roofs or pitched roof, gambrel, it really doesn't matter. So we would love to work together with, the town and figure out what is the right architectural feel. The ones on the right is a somewhat of a similar, albeit a little smaller. It's a 12 unit, a 12 unit deal we're working on with another mountain town. But there's a mix of 1, 2, and I think 3 bedroom, and some of them have an option for a garage. So I just wanted to mention that like we're not in a box here.
Yeah, and this visual is showing how that site plan could really provide some flexibility, creating kind of interior green spaces for the community and kind of breaking up some of those buildings. But this was the other 12 unit conceptual plan that Mike was just talking about.
This is great, you guys, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for the board to ask some questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, great.
Sure.
Yeah, that's our spiel.
Okay, great. And I'm fortunate to have seen this before, but I know not everybody has. So I'm going to kick us off with, I think, what we're all wondering, which is, are you thinking that these might be capital A affordable as some part of a program? Who would do the management of it? Like, how do we, or is it market rate affordable, which totally fine answer either way.
So Mike, Melissa question.
Yeah. And that is a question. I mean, we could do either. We could do any of those. If it's capital A affordable, we're just going to need to discuss the impact fees more than lowercase affordable, and more than attainable. Build to rent, build to sell. If it's like what is the town? What do you think is the need in the town? Because we could do either.
Yeah, and I would just add on to what Mike said about relief from impact fees. I guess the more affordable you move on the spectrum and the closer to, or more in the direction of rental you move, I guess the more relief would really be needed to make the project.
Would you guys be willing to do you think a mix of rental and ownership?
I know
think we
that was,
consider- Oh, go
that's
ahead,
something,
Mike.
yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying.
I've talked enough.
I said, I think we would consider it. One of our concerns, which I know has been a concern of the BCHA, just with some of the smaller rental projects they manage in the area, is just when you get to too few of a number of units, it just becomes really difficult to manage, just because of the lack of scale and having staff that are ready to be on site at a moment's notice and that type of thing.
Other questions? I don't want to monopolize.
The zoning on this now is R2,
Yeah,
and so it would need to be R3.
have to change to R3, so
Or PUD.
it would be a PUD. I mean, right now,
PUD.
Oh,
right now it's the 517 is 3 acres. Looking at and having spoken to a surveyor, it's like 1.78 acres. Looking at subdividing what we would need. So then you take away the driveway, it's around about 1.4 acres. Zone R2 as of now.
I couldn't tell from the colors pretty close on the screen. How much of it's in the floodplain and we have marked, is it?
Where you look at design, and it was even eye-opening to me. So we went back to the 25, 27 units. They've actually put the units beyond the flood zone. If we went back one slide,
Just if I'm reading that right, it's just the
so
southern
you see
part.
where
Okay,
the faded blue is.
Right here.
those colors are.
Yeah, so where the house is as of now, I don't think that was even impact. I mean, I think the basement was, but it wasn't touched by the flood, which is interesting. So if you look where I'd like to subdivide it, actually may give us more privacy for the wedding venue, is to actually take a little bit more property, but as they said, like, no, you're not in that floodway.
And then the access to this would be primarily through the dirt road that's there now.
Yeah, but I think we probably maintain, things are now is maintain egress both ways.
And I think you'd want to
Yeah, I think so.
emergency at least.
But even for what we're doing on the property is you probably want two ways in and out. But yeah, for me, it's a commercial decision. I said I've lived here for 20 years. I see the need for housing, but I need to make a decision, and I just want to see the appetite of the town, and I'm sure there's going to be pushback. If you look at those images, there's 2 properties, or actually 3 that are adjacent to that. I'm sure we're going to get pushback there. But other than that, I could see the family on top of the hill that would maybe look down upon the property that may push back. But other than that, there's really no impact. I mean, not no impact because.
How many living units are there now?
Was that sorry?
How many living units are there now?
It's R2, so 2.
It's just
One of them is split into 2. But, we sort of inherited a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that residence, the existing building, would it stay or go within this plan?
With this plan, that would go.
Okay,
With my plan, you could probably, as I said, split into 3. The one closest to the river would remain, plus the storage and the laundry.
yeah,
So
but that,
we keep one, but that main house.
yeah,
We could sell off and keep it and have that renovated and then do another one, or we can sell the whole thing off as one house plus the 1.8 acres.
so there is room to build these 27 units and keep that, no,
No.
okay. So these 27 units would replace those 2 that are there currently,
Yeah, replace the one big.
yeah, that one big.
Yeah. I mean, it's very close, but I don't think you'd want to retain that house for those. I mean, and that's one of the reasons is it's hard to maintain, even since we've owned it in 15 months. Garage doors, heating, It looks great from the outside, but it really isn't, unfortunately.
And those current units, would they be 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms?
I think there's a combination of ones and twos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So potentially those tenants, their tenants.
I would like to, I mean, that's, even when we took over, was concern amongst the people renting from us. We had to change a few rules. It was the party place when Pittsburgh 66 used to close, so that had to end pretty quickly. But the residents are fantastic. And I said I do not want to push them out, and even one particular resident she's the one probably furthest east, musician in town, and I don't want to see her displaced. So even if we sold this, I try to keep her there as long as possible. Yeah,
And she could potentially move into one of these newer units.
you'd hope so. Yeah.
All right, well, we're gonna have to, this has been great, and thank you so much. We're gonna be talking about this later on in the
Okay.
meeting. I think you probably saw. And, you know, I don't think it's gonna be a super long meeting tonight, so you're welcome to stay or, you know.
But I just, as I said, I
virtually.
mean, from our point of view, I think Mike and Melissa put a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
And, but for us.
And Andrew.
Andrew. It's true. I've met with a few of the trustees on property. It is a commercial decision, but I'd like to see it head in this direction. But I can't afford the time to drag this out for too many months, so.
Understood.
Yeah, real quick question, really fair. This has existing 3/4 water tap and 1 sewer tap, is that?
Yep, that was just resolved in the agreement, that was one of the properties there, so it is physically 1¾ inch.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your birthday. Happy birthday, Mike.
Thanks.
And,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, let's take just a 5-minute break. So. Split the difference. Yep. All right, we're live. Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. I will call the Tuesday, February 18th Lions Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Williams, Trustee Hamrick,
President.
Trustee Dottie,
Present.
Trustee Lowell, Trustee Browning,
Present.
and Trustee Delman.
Present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. I'll read the land acknowledgement. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. And before we take a reflective moment of silence here, I think by now we've probably all heard the news about Mayor Angelo. And just want to take a minute to express our love for him and his family and what he's dedicated to this community is beyond remarkable. And so I know that we all pray for them and hold them in our hearts and our thoughts. Thank you. I can hear his voice in my head saying, get on with it.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, Laverne passing, Nick passing, and we've lost so much institutional knowledge in this town that it's a real loss. Not just the individuals themselves who miss their guidance and stuff, but you get so used to turning to those people and saying, hey, do you remember when this happened? Why that haven't here anymore? And it's difficult. And it's a big loss personally and institutionally.
Thank you. It's true. Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
I would like to suggest an amendment to the agenda. I would like to move boards and commissions, which is item 10. I'd like to actually move that up to after audience business and follow-up and before staff reports. So that that's okay. Sir, do we need a second on that or can we just vote on that? Brandon?
We need a second.
You need a second.
Let's vote on that amendment.
And that motion passes unanimously.
All right, let's vote on the agenda as amended.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
All right, we have a proclamation tonight, Black History Month proclamation. We're halfway through the month, but better late than never. Whereas Black History Month is a time to honor and celebrate the rich heritage, achievements, and contributions of African Americans to the history, culture, and progress of the United States. And whereas the observance of Black History Month originated from the vision of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who founded Negro History Week in 1926, which later evolved into a month-long celebration to ensure that the vital role of African Americans is recognized and remembered. And whereas African Americans have played a pivotal role in shaping our nation's history through leadership, innovation, cultural contributions, and a steadfast pursuit of justice and equality, despite facing centuries of systemic oppression and discrimination. And whereas Black History Month provides an opportunity for all citizens to reflect on the sacrifices, triumphs, and resilience of African Americans throughout history, from the abolition of slavery and the civil rights movement to the ongoing efforts to combat racial inequality. And whereas this month also encourages us to recognize the diversity within the Black community and to appreciate the creative, intellectual, and economic contributions that continue to enrich our society. And whereas the celebration of Black History Month underscores the importance of fostering greater understanding, respect, and unity, inspiring current and future generations to continue the pursuit of justice and equity for all people. Whereas I call upon all citizens to join me in celebrating the achievements and contributions of African Americans, reflecting on the lessons of history and continuing the important work of building a just and inclusive society. Now therefore, I, Holly Rogan, Mayor of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, do hereby proclaim February 2025 as Black History Month in Lyons, Colorado. In witness whereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the Town of Lyons to be affixed this 18th day of February 2025. Thank you. All right, now is the time for audience business. If you would like to address the board, please feel free to come on up, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 4 minutes. The board will respond after everybody has spoken, and then staff can respond as well.
I'm everybody.
Yep, sign up, Dave.
Yep. I'm Dave Chilson, 731 Second Avenue, and yeah, in the spirit of the news about Nick, I just want to appreciate all of you and the institutional knowledge. Just like you're saying, we have a lot of, especially you have a lot of knowledge about this place. I'm here just to ask for clarity. Maybe somebody has information on this, but there's a lot of people who love walking near the north side of town where the Connor property is. And when we heard that the Connor family found a document that says that there might be a deed giving part of that road to the town in 2008, which is a bit vague. When we looked at
Do you mean the Russell property?
the Russell, sorry, yeah.
Yes, okay.
So when we looked up the property, it's just back and forth and back and forth between the Connor family and the Russell family. And I don't know them at all, never met them. I don't know, they might be married. I don't know anything about it, but I would love to have some clarity as far as, is there an intention to put a road there for egress for, the community up on the hill? Is there a possibility of a fence being put there? And just sort of where this is all coming from. I don't have a lot of information. I just know that when I went online and the Connors found, oh, look, hey, we found something from Margaret Russell. It's like, well, Margaret Russell and Connor go back and forth in the deeds. And I don't understand it. And I was wondering if anyone else does. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board this evening?
There's no one else on
There's
those.
no help. Okay, so I think, Dave, as you know, we're talking about this later this evening. So I think I'm gonna ask staff first if they'd like to respond and then see if anybody else would also like to respond.
I don't, well, we haven't talked about our intent at all, with the property, if we choose to move forward, so, I can't answer that part. In regard to the relation with Connors, it appears there might be something, but I just heard about this today. I do not know what it is. Earlier, I found out that the Connors and the Boones there was a marriage there, but I don't know what the relationship between the Connors and the Russells are. Though there very well could be. So I can find out. I mean, I can look around a little bit.
And we'll have an opportunity to discuss this and.
Yeah, I think how that came up was there was 2 years where they paid the taxes on this parcel. Who was that?
Bell was the name,
Bell.
Beall,
Oh, Beal.
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 Okay.
That is probably Howard Beal and his wife. They own several pieces of property in the area that have been what do I call it, displaced by the assessor's office. And they've been like on a sale. And so they may have come in and purchased it and then the family thought they purchased it. And then the family said, no, we hold title to this. That's what it was Beal. So I don't know where the Connors and the Russells, how that comes together.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Would you care to comment?
I'm kind of in the same position. I don't know all the relationships there. We did a lot of looking and emailing. I didn't know any connection that the Connors had to it.
Do you do it?
You know, I don't know.
Anything to add?
No, I'm looking for clarification as well and looking forward to the discussion. It's good to have some input via email as well, so it'll help with our discussion, I hope, but I mean, this is all new to me.
No comment.
Yeah, and I don't either. I think, we'll discuss it in just a little bit here. I don't anticipate that it's gonna be late into the night when we have that discussion, so you're welcome to stay or go home and grab some popcorn.
Or macaron.
Or macaron. Okay. All right, so, thank you. We'll close audience business. And, we're gonna move on then in the amended agenda to boards and commissions. So it is my great pleasure to appoint Lee Williams to the Board of Adjustments. Thank you so much, Lee. And Ken Singer to the Sustainable Futures Commission, which is terrific. So, staff will be in touch with the details for that. And we thank you very much. Thank you, Ken, if you're watching. Okay, and now we have an update from HHSC, who was kind enough to provide their report in our packet.
Yes. First of all, thank you. Good evening. Let me assure you there will not be a quiz. I'm assuming you've read it and I've been wrong before. So actually, this update is three parts. One is the update about 2024, what we've done and what we're hoping to do. You also got a proposal for an addition to the our mission statement, and a proposal for change to the municipal code, or questions about it also. So our update. We have two primary: housing, human services. Housing for this last year, Lions Valley Townhomes was still on our radar. I was there today. They still have 2 units open, a 2-bedroom townhouse, a 3-bedroom home. The gal I talked to had no idea if there was anybody in the application process at all. They've had a really hard time. I've gotten the impression most of it is because, especially the 3 bedrooms, the rent's too high for people who qualify at 60%. That's just me. I'm trying to connect with the manager on a monthly basis. It's a little bit of hit and miss. And I think in the annual report that trustee Lowell puts together, I mentioned that Summit as a company doesn't get an A for communication. And so I don't think they communicate that much well with the residents, but I don't think they communicate that well with their staff. I've talked to the property manager about things that I've heard here. It was totally new to her. She had not heard about landscaping. She'd never heard about this. So, and that's just the way it is. I think trustee Williams mentioned when the group were here that that's sometimes the way, landowners work, or, landlords work. So that's the way it is, but we're gonna keep working on it, at least to have good communication on the grassroots. Besides that is preserving what we've got, and we were excited about Seward. It panicked us to think that 14 households were losing their homes, and all we had to do, if we could possibly do it, is build 10 homes. That math doesn't work out. So, one of the things we would like to look at, and this is probably a long shot, is looking at empty homes around, or possibly homes that are in little disrepair, or maybe empty, to see if owners are interested at all in improving it or not. Again, that's a long shot, but you don't try, you don't know. The Riverbend development is exciting. I'm not sure what affordable versus workforce is in terms of what their rent's gonna be or whatever, so here's hoping. We worked on the comp plan, gave you some feedback. We really need, possibly from you, some direction for how do we communicate with the partners in the comp plan. There are lots of things that are happening. There's only one that's only housing and human services. ECDC we work with, and I've been hoping that we would have the commission chairs get together and we can sit and talk about how do we do that? Because we obviously can read each other's minutes, but that doesn't get you everything you need. So if you have some insight for how you can help us go from the comp plan fairly high, each of us doing pieces, to how do we coordinate, or at least just be aware of what's going on. Human services is the second part. Human services is sort of the opposite of housing. Housing is very specific. Pretty, it's great to get a lot of information. Human services is other duties as assigned. It's whatever comes through the door plus humanity. So disseminating resources information was one of our major focuses. You may have noticed in the Redstone Review for the last 6 months, they've had a column that we put in updates on resources, etc. We very much tried to put in, like in winter, utility help. This last one was an amazing new service, relatively new service that Boulder County has. The CAT team, and I can't remember the other acronym for mental health. They come to you wherever you are, school, home, park, etc. If you read the article, it's very broad-based. It's not emergency or his crisis, or just information. So that's one of the things that we've wanted to do very much. We've got also in the Redstone, the update on the medical provider. Big news when she came, even bigger news when she had shared with us that she's taking insurance. Good, I mean, this is pretty good stuff for us. We spent a lot of information, a lot of time getting the Get Help pamphlet updated. It was last done in 2021, hard copy. So we divide that up. We've updated it, and just today, got an email from Boulder County Human Services. They are doing a pilot project. It's called Just Get Help, for an online resource. I'm going to get trained on that later this week. That could be really powerful because what we've got in Get Help, if you when you see it, or it's county stuff. It's not just Lions, but theirs will be, I think, searchable. And hopefully, I just sent her our Get Help update, and oops,
Keep going.
Oh, okay. I just sent her our update, and possibly she can input some of our information because ours is fairly up to date. The other interesting thing about this potential Get Help is each organization is going to be responsible for updating their own information. And so that takes the pressure off anyone who puts this together to do what we did for the last 6 months, call and update. So I'm excited about that. Anything that's easy and that people can get. We're still thinking, we've got to consider about how much hard copy we'd like to make, especially maybe just copying was part for seniors or mental health, any of those. So I was supposed to have applied for funding last fall, and I didn't realize that or remember that until I started doing my update. So we may come back for some funds for printing. We also sponsored an insurance enrollment event in December, which was, I think we had 10 or 12 people. One of whom, she was just so scared. She's on disability, gonna get Medicare, so scared that she was gonna lose what she had. And so the folks from Medicaid were there and really helped her out. And there were several others that got help, but that was really good. Looking ahead, April 15th, we have partnered with the library for disaster preparedness. Boulder County Disaster Preparedness Management, Monica Weber, will be here for the hour-and-a-half training. We got a grant from, the Community Foundation. And we have 50 backpacks. That between Monica and us will have information and things. And I think what we're gonna end up doing is, for some people, it's just giving them that, go in peace. For some people, we need to sit down and talk to, how are you gonna plan this? How do you work around, who are you gonna call for whatever? So we need to identify those folks. Each of our meetings, we get updates from Boulder County Area Agency on Aging, which is an amazing group. The Town of Lyons, the Board of Trustees report, LEAF, and then we also have presentations by resources. We also have a presentation by your Sustainability Commission and about the time and use, I think it is, for electricity. So we've been busy. If there are things that come to your mind, or people say to you, gee, why don't we have foot care, or where do I find this, and so. Hopefully we'll get it on your site and other places soon. We've got to make sure we've got it on. But just, let us know and we'll bird dog it and find something for them. You also got the simplest thing is, the change to our mission. We were working last summer, we realized our mission did not include housing. I know it, and housing was added somewhere about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. It just didn't make it to the mission. So that's our proposal to you, that perhaps that could be added. The other thing you got, and we are just proposing this to you, is the change in municipal code. There are 2 things we added specific to housing. And then if you look, I've bolded and italicized some questions we have. We're supposed to help oversee programs and facilitate service delivery, and we need to know what oversee means. What are we supposed to be doing or not doing? What does that look like? Number 3, which is talking about available services for the aging, volunteer group. And I think this is probably put together before LEAF was really active. So we just need to know, do you want us to do this kind of thing? Or do you see the LEAF volunteer, which is morphing, growing, happening? We just need some input. Let's see, I think you can look at the others. We did get specific. There was something about any special matters of concern come to us, and we were a little uncomfortable with that because that sounds like we're gonna cure everyone's ill. So we changed it to matters pertaining to housing and human services. You have any questions? Okay, the one thing that I have.
There are questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just have, and thank you for your work on this, Kay. I know you're doing a great job leading this commission. I just have one thing to add, one word, actually, to number 1 under section 2(8)(200). Advise the Board of Trustees on all matters pertaining to, I would also add housing there. Because
It is there.
I just
In
see
your
human
packet, it says-
services and aging.
I just added it in bold. It should be there.
It doesn't show.
It doesn't
Okay.
show.
No.
Well,
Yeah, in mine it does.
and this will be a future agenda item, so we're not gonna.
Okay, yeah, you're not gonna worry about it, but I can give that to you, or I can send you an update, because I sent it to you. This is the only copy I have.
Other things are bolded, but there's no housing on that particular
Interesting.
line. Yeah.
We'll have further
Send me your
discussions.
most recent again.
I'll send it to you. Okay.
Dave,
Last-
do you have a question?
No, no, other than thank you for doing a great job.
Well, the 5 of us that are on, I think provide a really nice variety. We've got 2 landlords that give us a really good input. So we've got that, I think we've got a lot of good people that are doing it. I attended a lot of your workshops this last summer because you guys have been looking and hearing a lot about housing. And I just would like to comment that perhaps rather than getting reimbursed at a flat stipend, that you get paid by the word. The number of words.
Absolutely
You
not.
have to be.
Absolutely not.
I have only read this stuff on housing and it's great stuff, but it's huge. Thanks much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kay. Thank you for all your work. Yeah, great.
Quick question, if you talked to the Senate people recently, we asked Paul Capps when he was here, and I think the staff all that, he said something about a waiting list, but I keep hearing there's vacancies. Do you have any idea, do they have a waiting list for like one bedrooms, but not for two or three?
Well, we don't have any one bedrooms, it's only 2 and 3, that's one of the barriers for us that Riverbend may help considerably with.
Any feel for that?
I will, the property manager. It was very interesting going. I went over there today, because Tina is usually there Tuesday and Thursday. I went to the office, I walked in the office, it was nice and warm, no one was there. So I called and was told that no one would be there, but they'd be there tomorrow. So they're gonna, someone was gonna come and lock the door. So I need to get back with them and I will ask Tina specifically if they have a waiting list. But I don't know what it would be.
I don't either, I couldn't figure it out.
I was told by a resident there that they've just received a notice that they are offering $200 to any resident who refers someone else who gets chosen. So,
And the application fee is waived on these last 2.
yeah, so,
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. I need to, I'm not sure the property manager really has an awareness of why this is so challenging, because the combination of everybody and his brother wanting to live in Lyons and having empty available just doesn't compute.
I'd love to know where they're advertising.
Where what?
I'd love to know where they're advertising.
They expanded to Boulder, Longmont. I'll check with Tina again. That was about 3 months ago, 2 months ago.
Trustee Hammer, I think you had a question.
Yeah, just a question with, you saw the Riverbend presentation, so to me is, do you have a recommendation as to how to figure out the demand side of the equation?
The demand side?
Yeah, meaning, do we need single family, do we need
You know,
bedrooms?
part of my question, when I looked at it was, what's affordable? I mean, what are they gonna charge? That'll be some part of it, because there's a lot of folks who are double employed that probably will be fine. We need the 1 bedrooms. I'm not sure we need 24 or 27. I just asked, Lee about his list of folks who want 1 bedrooms. My personal question about that is how many of them are seniors? These are really cool. They're built, to avoid the flood. But I'm old. I may not want to walk every day up to my house and, through the garage. I think a mix would be better.
Yeah.
Because I think there are those who are a little bit too high to qualify for the townhomes. But that a 2-bedroom there would be ideal.
Well, and maybe when the time comes, we can ask HHSC to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the only comment I have, is, when the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging folks came, we've been talking since last summer about what is the plan for evacuations for Walt Self and the other Boulder County housing properties. And I love the go bags. I remember when you and I were together when we first saw those at CML, I think. And those are great, but I think that we really need to get an answer from Boulder County about how are we gonna do this before the snow melts.
Then you need to come April 15th, because not only will Monica be there, but Craig from the disability group who presents with her is gonna be presenting.
Are they gonna be presenting an evacuation plan?
They've got all I've seen hers in terms of, it's a high level.
Okay, I think and maybe that's more of a staff thing to get working on that.
And I can ask Craig to cover that. If you want me to, I'm not sure he's ready for evacuation plan in Lyons, but he can go through the process of what do we do with elderly and disabled.
Well, that would be great, and at the same time, I do think we need to get to the granular, what is the evacuation plan for Lyons?
Right.
So, thank you so much. 2 open seats on Housing and Human. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. I already do, I'm through.
All right, let's move on to staff reports, please. Boulder County Sheriff's Office, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. Really just stats, and Saturday was quite a mess in town. We got that rain the night before and then it froze and then it started snowing. I don't think the plows, CDOT or county roads even knew the snow was coming, and I came in to do traffic in town at like 12:30, and it was just madness. We had 3 property damages, no injuries, but just within like 20 minutes of each other, so it was a mess all around the county, so. One was at Fifth and Main, the guy took out a sign, I actually saw it, it's like, oh, this guy's gonna crash. Going around to go up north on, West Main. And then 2 were at, Miley and, Fifth Avenue, there was one in the ditch, and then someone I think was coming in or out of town too fast and swerved around the fire truck, and I think went in the ditch. So let's see, so for stats tickets, I updated it through today. I know in the report it's only up to, I believe, the 12th, but so far this year we have 72 tickets, which is down 30 from last year with 102, and that's this month especially has been terrible to just with the snow and never going away. In February we have 27 versus 59 last February. Calls are down 58 at 250 from 308 last year. And then let's see, February we have 80, so we're down 10 from February last year, 83 to 93. Even with the 3 accidents over the weekend, we're up 1 from last year, so hopefully that doesn't continue. And then just with flock, in and out of town from the 1st through the 10th is just over 82,000 cars, and then leaving town almost 40,000, and then coming into town almost 43,000.
Thank you. Any questions for Sergeant Sears? I had a request from a resident who came to talk to me at Moxie. And she was concerned because she'd heard about, you know, the windows getting shut out at the plaza and then the skylight, and you know, there were rumors about other things, and she said, you know, why don't we have like a police blotter kind of thing? So my takeaway is that when unusual incidents occur in town, people seem to want to know, you know, first of all, they want to know that you all are on it, which of course you always are. But I wonder if there's a way that the town or you can communicate, hey, we understand this is an unusual series of events. We're looking into it, you know, just kind of that confirmation, I think would help folks feel a little more comfortable.
Well, I think that's a great idea with, because, you know, they didn't do a press release for that incident because they didn't know, right? We didn't know what was shot because until the following day, and you know, I don't know if that's something I could do with Kim, is just send like a quick little blurb, like, hey, you know, and I have no problem. I think that's great. I've always thought, like, I'm not a Facebook person and I don't like, you know, and so.
I've already talked to Kim about it and she was excited about coming up with something too, so.
Maybe even like a weekly, or I don't know, just anything like that, right? Out of the ordinary type stuff, and, or even good stuff too, like, oh, hey, you know, this deputy did this, or.
Or accidents are down.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
yeah, maybe just like a weekly blurb and
Yeah.
you blast what you did.
Or even, you know, it's just this is still under investigation, it's too early to comment. And then encouraging people to sign up for the Boulder County Sheriff's announcements that come out.
yeah, the press release,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and speaking of that, there is really, I didn't put anything down, but no updates with the detectives, and, I think I've said this before, but it's, really one of our best detectives is on it, so. Hopefully you got some good leads coming our way here soon, so.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Stay warm.
Yes. Ready for spring.
Yeah.
I was up in the mountains all day, snow were being let in this.
Cool.
Next week. Yeah,
Okay.
all right, have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Okay, before we ask for the administrator's report, Clerk Vasquez told me something very important today, which is that you have now been, this is your 15th employment anniversary with the town. You started with the town on February 24th, 2010. Just
out of college.
out of college. Yeah. And we're here for 3 years before the flood, getting your feet wet.
Yes. thankfully.
The first time. So, we just have this little certificate
Oh,
to give to you and just to thank you for 15 years of exemplary service. The town is very lucky to have you.
Thank you very much.
that's very nice. Thank you. I know time flies when we're having fun, right?
She's listed in the CML booklet this time too for your award.
Yeah, this Dynamic Good Governance Award last year. Yeah.
No, it's, especially with the flood in there that took 10 years of time, that's
Off your
makes it
plate.
goes pretty fast, yeah. But thank you so much for acknowledging that. So, admin report this couple weeks. I did, in the packet, Cassie is online tonight. She was hoping to be here in person today. And with all of the activity with weather and things, her flight got canceled. And so we had to change some things, but she'd like to do the sales tax report since we have good news for the end of the year there. As well as talk about a letter that's in your packet from the auditors. So admin wise, just reassuring everyone that we're staying as informed as we can about federal freezes and immigration enforcement. Nothing really new there to report. The only thing I did add was that there's now some discussion about privatizing the US Postal Service. And some folks in town may not know that the town owns the post office lot. And so that could have an impact on us. It is we do receive a lease from that every year, and it's a fairly substantial lease for us. The current contract is set to expire with the USPS. What did we figure out? 29.
26, but 5 years.
26 and then another 5-year option.
2031 is when it's set to expire with the Postal Service. But we are again watching this to see what that implications might be or not be for our community. Could be very significant or may not have a lot of impact if it could be a smooth transition. But we'll see. Keep an eye on that. There are stats in your packet about Old Man Winter. That event is really taking off. It has always done well, but we also heard from our business community that many of them had really, really successful days.
Oh, great.
That day. And they are interested in maybe putting on a summer event, very similar to this, but summertime. So that would be great for the community. Want to remind people, the Boulder County Commissioners will be here this Thursday, the 20th at 5:30 for a town hall to discuss wildfire mitigation with the community. They had told me they do not plan to televise it. And so guess we'll have to come in person if you want to hear that one. I did put a little blurb in about business license renewals since it's now past the month of January. We have 71 businesses that have been issued local business licenses and approximately 30 that still do not have one. So we are going to send a contact out to those 30. And I would like to follow up on what we talked about last time, which is if they don't renew in the next month, then I'd like to provide that list to the Board of Trustees and the public if you would like it. That's still the case? Okay.
Great.
So we will reach out to them individually to remind them that they needed to get those renewed. There were several other items in the report. I don't think we need to take time unless anyone has questions on them.
Supposed to hear
On the post office lease, thank you for sending that out.
Sure.
Is it an automatic 5-year renewal or
All they
is
have
it
to do is
mutual?
give us a 90-day, we
Notice,
get the 90-day notice and it's in place.
but this is the last term.
This will
of
be the
that.
last renewal.
Understood, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just hoping to see if there's opportunities to renegotiate. Because I saw where the yearly fee was flat for 20 years.
Yeah,
which
for
I
20
thought
years.
that was a sweetheart deal. So, I mean, we're catching up and it just seems like a really nice deal. But any chance we get to renegotiate sooner would be better, in my opinion.
No, they have, probably start, if there is a USPS by then, we'll start that probably the year ahead. To start discussions on that if they're interested. Trustee Dotson?
I have a question regarding immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about some of our residents. I'm just curious as to how, town staff if town staff would be expected to cooperate if ICE actually showed up at town hall. I mean, is that something,
Yes,
is that a
we-
possible scenario?
We have, I have been provided from the sheriff's department, the protocol that the county is following regarding ICE showing up at a workplace. And, we also have publications in English and Spanish that are available. We also made those available, to Leaf to hand out, so people understand their rights as well. We know there is a list of documents there to bring with them if they are here. And really what we would do is stop, and wait for the sheriff to arrive.
So it is
They would
possible
ask
that
for
they
those
were,
documents.
so I guess it's within their right to show up at town hall and ask for a list of residents to, like, would they,
No,
No.
not residents.
okay.
No, they would only be here if they were asking about an employee.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
Um,
they wouldn't be asking for like a list of residents' addresses or things like that through the utility bill or
It's all
something?
confidential.
Okay, okay,
Yep. So
Just
no, it
checking.
wouldn't be that way. Yeah.
good to know.
Brandon has a question.
Yeah, just on that topic too. I mean, there's a state law that says we don't have to cooperate if we don't want to as a local government. And that you can't basically commandeer the local police and sheriff's departments to do ICE work. And so there is some protection there. But the answer that if someone showed up from ICE and said, you know, we want your employees list, I mean, the correct response to that is, you know, with a warrant or a subpoena that may be provided, but not freely given.
With the warrant signed by a judge.
Yep, not an administrative warrant. Yep.
Other questions for Administrator Simonson?
Director Eystone is ready for finance.
Yeah. Director Eystone, sorry you're not here, but glad you're safe and warm.
I don't know about warm, but thank you. It has been negative temperatures for what feels like weeks. But I hear that warm weather is on the way to you all, so that's great. So I have some good news with sales tax that I wanted to provide. The December numbers, as you know, don't come in until February because we are 2 months in arrears in that collection, and the state has recently provided those reports. And the month of December was 28% higher than the month of December in 2023. So that definitely was significant. It really is attributed to online sales. So good and, bad for the local businesses, great for the town. We get to collect that revenue. I did compare some of our top online sales retailers to the same period last year, and they definitely make up for a really large chunk. Another stat that also proves that is that the local sales tax collected for the month was 42% compared to the non-local sales tax. And just to put that into perspective, last year for the month of December sales, it was 51% local. So that's a pretty big difference attributed to those online sales and the online businesses. Year end, we were 9.8% higher than 2023. So, that's a significant amount of revenue that we received, 169,000 approximately. So that is definitely some good news. And then the last tax piece that I wanted to report on was the local sales tax for 2024. It did come in about the same as 2023, around just a little over 129,000. As you may all recall, that the 2025 budget included a 25% grant to LCF for substance abuse and mental health programs throughout the community. So that AP invoice is on the list for approval tonight. The amount is just a little over $32,000 that will be granted. And then LCF will administer that for the town. I do think that it is appropriate tonight to mention that Nick Angelo would be very pleased to see this happen. He was definitely a proponent and one of the few who pointed out the ballot language for to hopefully get some of that money allocated to substance abuse. So I'm sure he would be happy to see that happening. February is also the last month that we typically pay 2024 invoices. We accrue those back to 2024. So typically this AP run is accounts payable run that you're approving tonight is the last of the 2024 checks. So we will have a better idea of 2024 remaining funds and fund balances, unaudited fund balances for you at the next meeting. And then last in the packet is a preliminary governance letter for the communication of the 2024 audit. We receive that every year and are required to put that in the packet for you all. Just gives you the basic information of what is going on with the audit, the timeline. They're going to start in April with the hope to finish up in June and have that report available for you in June. So in the meantime, we'll be working on preliminary balancing, financial statements, all sorts of year-end information gathering for that audit coming up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Director Armstrong?
Yes. And kind of was trying to mention this, but what is meant in that pre-audit report by the management override of controls material misstatements? What is that about?
Let me bring that letter up. Which piece?
Yeah, third paragraph from the bottom, we have identified the following material misstatement as part of our audit planning. Number one, management override of controls. I don't know what that means in real world terms.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that is a typical statement in all of those. Basically just pointing out that there's always a risk of management override of controls with any organization. You know, anybody can override the controls. Now, is that something that, you know, they're going to look at every single control and make sure that that's not being done? They don't do that every year. They can't do that every year. But it is a significant risk that could happen in any given audit. I can have him speak a little bit more to that. I know that I feel like this is also addressed in the final communication, but I would have to double check. I do think that Eric has spoken on this a little bit before, and I'm happy to reach out to him and just get his take to make sure that what I'm relaying to you is correct. But I believe that is, you know, part of their audit every year.
Whether there's really anything specific or if it's just a generic,
I think it's generic, yeah.
Seems like that should be applied to the federal government.
Well, as a very small community, we don't have as many layers, you know, to be able to cross-check people. And we do our best with, you know, the person who's doing AP can't write the check, you know, all those different things, but there's still always that possibility that anyone in management could override a control and someone not know it. So, but I think it'd be good to have Eric, if he could just give us a little statement on that, we can put it in the next board packet.
Sure. I agree. It does. It is
It
a
sounds
shocking
awful.
statement. It does.
Well, and it just sounds, that grabbed my eyeballs because it just seems strange. This is kind of a pre-audit letter and it says, we found this issue already. So it was a little concerning when I saw it.
Yes, I'll be sure to have him give me a little blurb about it. I can include it in the next packet.
Thank you very much, Director Eystone. Appreciate it as always.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Administrator Thomas. Thank you. And we'll move on to legal update, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rogan. So obviously a lot is going on at the federal level right now. One of the items we've been focused on in lines, as you know, is the federal funding freeze issues. And to that point, Mayor Rogan made me aware today of an opportunity to join on to an amicus brief from the Mayor's Innovation Project. And this is specifically related to NIH funding, but more or less the same principles apply for everything. And this is an amicus brief in the Federal District Court of Massachusetts, where 23 attorney generals are suing the federal government for withholding NIH funding, National Institute of Health. Right now, that's under restraining order. So the federal government is not allowed to cut that money. And a number of cities and municipalities are joining into this amicus brief to say that, one, that it's illegal. You can't do this constitutionally. And two, here's all the impacts basically of cutting this funding. It is due tomorrow. And so normally we would, spin this up for a separate agenda item, but, given kind of the pressing nature of this, item, we thought it was appropriate at least to bring up as a possibility tonight. And just want to see if there was any interest in being a part of that. The parties that I know of at least that are already on this amicus brief are Birmingham, Alabama, Boston, Cleveland, Gainesville, Salt Lake, metropolitan governments of Nashville, Davidson County. This is kind of a big list of right now, of course, all the big cities, but I think they're looking for a broad coalition. So just bring it up. I think Mayor Rogan may have more information if the board is interested.
And I don't have much more information except to say this came across my desk at 2:30 this afternoon. So no time to add it to the packet, and because of the deadline, I thought, we'll just bring it to the board in legal update and see if there's an interest in signing on or in kind of deputizing me to decide whether to sign on or we could not sign on.
I am not aware that we've ever directly received any NIH funding, but I do believe Boulder County does. I heard some concerns expressed between some of the different city managers about this being withheld and the consequences of that if people are not able to get suicide prevention services or mental health services. So and maybe as part of the discussion is if Boulder County is getting it and it's serving our residents, we may have an interest. Otherwise, it's up to, I don't know that we've ever received NIH directly.
Yeah, and as someone that's worked in a medical school before, this is very impactful to, it affects your indirect recovery costs, but I don't know where we fit into it.
Yeah, I don't either.
So, Anschutz certainly. Not sure it really impacts us. Or more.
I think Mayor's Innovation Project has a history of broad outreach to cities and towns of all sizes. And I think that's the broad coalition that Brandon was referring to. But if there are cities and towns of all sizes from across the country, it's more impactful than just the Bostons and Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to support Boulder County because we're benefiting from those services, and I think I would totally trust, you taking authority on that.
I'm sympathetic to the effort, but I'd have to see what we're signing on to before I can.
The full brief. Yeah, I think Brandon and I were both surprised that the full brief wasn't attached or included. Trustee Delman? Do you have an opinion? So it sounds like we're not gonna sign on to this amicus brief. But I appreciate you bringing it forward, Brandon.
Of course. That's all I had.
All right. Then let's move on to ordinances and public hearings. Tonight we have one. It's the first reading of ordinance 1180. An ordinance amending the Lions Municipal Code to comply with the HB 24/1007 and implementing occupancy limits based on health and safety codes. Attorney Dittman? You wanna take this?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
take this one. Yep. So thank you, Mayor Rogan. What this is all about is the statute that was passed last year, went into effect July 1st of this year, which prohibits all local governments from enforcing occupancy limits based on familial status. And what we have found in kind of researching this issue in the Lions Code, and I think other communities have found this as well, is that, even though we don't, say we directly, regulate on families, we really do, something terms like single family housing, multifamily. And so it shows up a lot in our code. I think we found 36 instances where, family in reference to some sort of, sizing was referenced in the Lions Municipal Code. And so what I did, originally with Planner Bowen's help is, start looking at what other communities are doing in terms of responding to this issue. And I really kind of pulled mostly from the city of Boulder and the city and county of Broomfield in order to, make a code amendment which would comply with the statute. I think Boulder went for a very comprehensive amendment where they had 140 pages where they took out family at every place it was mentioned in their code. We thought that was a bit much. It was gonna be a lot of work for us to do that. And so what Broomfield did was also say, that these family terms mean this, like single unit, multi-unit, etc., as a way of kind of bridging that gap between the time that we, still have family references in our code. I do think it's incumbent, moving forward, we design new ordinances to make sure that, we're referencing dwelling units and not families. But that's kind of the approach I took. In addition, I added in language for what we can enforce in terms of occupancy, which I mentioned earlier during the workshop, is really just health, safety types of regulations. So fire code and building code are the big ones. And so there was language from DOLA, which I basically copied word for word to put in as the general occupancy limitation language. And so that's what you're going to see in that piece. So I think that pretty much addresses, at least from a high level, of what we're trying to do. We haven't been enforcing occupancy limits since this law went into effect, just like everybody else. But we thought it was time to actually look at the code and start, fixing it for the future.
Thank you. Questions for Attorney Dittman on this? Go ahead.
Just reading the section 16-1-180. The section that you added, Brandon, I don't see in there, I guess I was looking for, it refers to permitted by applicable adopted building code or safety codes, blah, blah, blah. And nowhere in our code does that exist, I guess is the question. I could not find anything that referenced that.
So we adopt those codes by reference. And so we have adopted the International Fire Code, the International Building Code. The building code is actually a suite of many different codes. And so we do adopt those from time to time, by reference. We're not directly incorporated in the code other than the fact that we can enforce it, and the copies are available, to look at in the clerk's office. And so you're not going to find, that directly in our code, but it is there through the reference.
Okay, so if we went to building code, would it somewhere in there I could find out how many people are limited by square footage? Okay.
Yeah, fire code is
codes. It's
Iffy. I mean, as Attorney Dittman mentioned, it's more the fire code that
Fire
has
code.
some regulations than, but I have seen some in maybe one place in the building code. About what you need to have, the maximum number of people in some size.
Yeah, I would look at the fire code first for a better idea. And so these changes, the state law mandate, really pushed a lot of this onto the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1180, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending the Lyons Municipal Code to comply with HB 24-1007 and implementing occupancy limits based on health and safety codes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote.
That motion passes unanimously. Oh, there we go, passed unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Clerk Vasquez, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Number 1 is resolution 2025-11, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting BRIC grant funding for the. Oh, I don't think this is the right one. It's not the right word. Well, BRIC grant funding for the 3rd Avenue stormwater design and allocating matching funds. I think it may be a bit different on the agenda. Item 2 is resolution 2025-12, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the First Amendment to the professional services agreement with Charles Abbott and Associates Incorporated. Item 3 is resolution 2025-13, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the First Amendment to the construction agreement with Dream Builders Incorporated for the US 36 Waterline Project, 24-US 36 Waterline-01. Item 4 is resolution 2025-14, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, supporting the participation in the Home Consortium intergovernmental agreement. Item 5 is the February 3rd, 2025 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 6 are the February accounts payable.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yep. I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything anyone would like to remove?
Yes, the first item about the BRIC grant. The mayor and I and the staff had some discussions about this. There's a long, convoluted.
Let's,
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I like to remove item 1.
thank you.
We'll get
Thank
to
you.
it. All right.
Yes, we will get there.
Okay.
Anyone else? Let's go to consent as amended.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, now trustee Brad.
Item 1, there's a long history going back several years of how this got started and how it ended up where it is in the packet now. And some of that information I just found out about this afternoon. So my proposal is that we postpone this until a later date. The next meeting, staff can be ready by then, and take it up then with more background information of how this got started and how it ended up where it is in the packet. So I guess the next meeting would be March
3rd.
Yeah, so I would move to postpone consideration of that item until March 3rd.
Before you vote on that, I'd like to ask, Tracy Sanders if there's a deadline for responding, just to make sure.
Yeah.
In case we need to have a special meeting.
Is she on the line?
I think so. Tracy, are you on the meeting?
Yes.
Is there a deadline to respond to this?
Well, unfortunately, we already did, but I think that we can terminate the agreement at any point and not accept the funds. So, so I've already notified the state that we may not accept the funding, but they already have the documentation and, but it shouldn't be an issue to turn back the funds if we don't want to take it.
Is this?
So you've already accepted the grant?
It was signed and sent back to me and I forwarded it to DHSEM, not realizing that we were not going to accept the funds or that it was in question. So the agreement had already got signed and accepted by the mayor and I forwarded it to DHSEM.
When did that happen?
Is that a DocuSign that came through?
No, I think it was
It wasn't like the other agreements. It was more of it was either, uh, actually, I think that we may have gotten an electronic signature on it. I can forward it to you. But I received it back from, records, and so I had forwarded it on.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to do a little bit of digging here.
Mhm. Okay, but there's not an issue right now postponing this to March 3rd.
No, like we can start it whenever, so as long as we're not incurring any funds, we're not out any money. So we haven't even procured a consultant or posted anything or done anything like that. So I do not feel like it would be an issue if we decide not to move forward, just to say that we decline to move forward with the funding.
We'll talk about it.
Okay, so the suggestion is to continue this item until March 3rd. Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion tonight? Okay, let's go to the motion.
Thank you, Tracy.
And that
Thank you,
motion
Tracy.
passes unanimously.
Okay. So let's move on to general business. The first item is discussion direction to staff on ADU amendments. We had a workshop about this earlier. And there were a couple, if I remember correctly, there were a couple of outstanding items that we wanted to talk about. One of them was owner occupancy. And whether we want to require owner occupancy during the application process.
I think we need to encourage any and all ADUs, maybe take a little risk on owner occupancy or outside occupancy, but just remove any barriers to encourage ADU development.
I'd be in agreement with that.
I agree with trustee Hamrick too. I get the point about wanting outside speculators, but I'm not sure that ADUs are what they get into unless they can get into it for like vacation rentals or anything. So I agree. I think they need to. Maybe it's possible for somebody, for example, who has a house who used to live in Lyons and then doesn't live in it anymore. They decide they want to add, and they rent it out now and they want to add an ADU. I'd like to see that avenue available. I don't think there is some risk to outside investors. I don't think it's a big thing.
Well. I disagree, but I'm clearly outvoted. I just really would hate to see a bunch of corporate owned properties in this town, rental or no, ADU or no. But I'm also, someone could apply for an ADU, build it, and then sell it to a corporation the next day. So, all right. So that's the answer to that. And then, we decided that if somebody wants more than 2 ADUs per acre, that would go to the PCDC.
PCDC recommendation, then board of trustees is what I have.
I thought it was just PCDC,
Unless
the property owner appeals their decision.
Yeah, I'm happy either way. What I had written down was PCDC recommendation, then board of trustees. But someone mentioned they wanted the board of trustees to see it, but whatever you guys want.
Yeah, I don't think the board needs to see it. Would you all think, Glenn?
I don't think we need to see it.
Trustee Browning?
I don't either, but I think there should be an appeal right, and not just for the applicant, but somebody opposed to the BCBC and BCDC granted. I think surrounding property owners should be able to bring it to the board of appeal if they want to. Just because I think anything that gets controversial, if there's like neighborhood opposition to something, I think elected officials are the ones who ought to make that ultimate call. Not one.
This process doesn't have any public input, does it? No,
No.
How does it get to the PCDC?
it's only if it's more than 2 per acre. Otherwise, it's all administrative review
Right.
and it's all allowed by the
But if
state,
somebody
whether or not a
wants
neighbor
to-
lives.
I mean, there aren't very many places to do this in the first place, but if somebody does come to the PCDC. Does PCDC decide yes or no? If they decide yes,
And
property
then,
owners don't like it, neighborhood owners don't like it, shouldn't they have the right to appeal?
It's not their application to appeal.
I don't know, but
They could
That's-
appeal under 106 if they wanted to. I mean, that would be their remedy, is if you'd say that PCDC, so it's a Colorado Rules of Civil Procedure, and that's how you appeal municipal decisions, basically, is through that rule. And what it says is that, you know, the PCDC in this case, or the Board of Trustees, abused its discretion in making this determination. And so that's the typical appeal process if the PCDC is the final step. If it's the Board of Trustees, then that's appealable under 106.
to the court. 106, or they could appeal to the Board of Trustees or to a court.
106 would go to a court, to a district court.
I was gonna say, I don't know of a process in our code now that, if a variance didn't pass by Board of Adjustments, it's a neighbor could protest it.
no,
I
it goes
don't know of
to
a
district
process.
court for Board of
Right,
Adjustments.
just the applicant
Yeah,
could
this would be
protest
the
it.
PCDC.
Well, do we want to talk about then sending, these applications to the Board of Adjustments versus the PCDC?
I don't think it's a Board of Adjustments item. Personally.
Those are variances.
Um,
I'm just thinking of a scenario where somebody, yeah, it's gonna be rare, because there aren't that many properties in town, where somebody wants to put 3 ADUs on a large property, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
2 of their neighbors say, no, don't want it. PCDC says we're gonna allow it. Those people are out of luck instead of going to court.
Yes,
Because there's no public hearing process.
there is a public hearing.
There are public hearings.
Yeah, at the PCDC, and the PCDC makes the decision. Is what we're
So the
saying.
neighbors would have a chance.
I just think that ought to be appealable to the Board of Trustees. Me agree, party.
I disagree.
You could have it go to the board after the PCDC if that was.
I'm not saying it's automatic, if the PCD grants it, nobody complains, great. But I'm saying, cut.
Well, I can,
Use off at the PCDC level, I'm not comfortable with non-elected officials making those decisions.
I can see your point. I can see your point about that. So what if, but having the precedent of neighbors, appealing a decision made by a quasi judicial body, that I think that could really gum up a lot of works in a lot of circumstances. So instead, what I would propose is that it goes from the PCDC to the board for final approval.
That's fine, but I don't think there's gonna be very few of the multi.
Yeah.
There's just not that many properties in town.
So the process would be, it would go to the PCDC, for their recommendation to the board,
But with the public hearing.
but with a public hearing.
Are they both public hearings or just
Hearing at both levels?
Yep,
okay?
and that should ameliorate,
Yep.
I think, what you're concerned about. Okay.
Okay.
I don't love it, but I also agree with you that I don't think there are gonna be a lot of these applications,
Well, there's 30 lots
if any.
in question. Over.
Well, certainly not all of those people would wanna build 380s, so, okay.
And pay the tap fees.
And pay the tap fees, which is the next issue is, so do we wanna talk about a tap fee waiver for ADUs of less than 800 square feet, which was Trustee Browning's suggestion?
That's what we have that.
And then, but any additional ADUs would have to pay a tap fee,
Would it be the same tap fee as a single family household?
which is 17,000?
I'd like to get the UVB's input on that.
When do they meet?
meet tomorrow, it's probably too late to put it on the agenda. But
And I think, Brandon, you're gonna need definition changes, right? A lot of it is based on an ADU is not a new tap. It's not a new service.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to change some of the wording in there to determine how we're gonna determine the service, right? We've always gone, if somebody taps into the water main, you pay the fee. Here, they're not doing that. They're connecting behind. So we're gonna have to start to look at everything kind of differently in this instance.
yeah, cause isn't there wording in there now that it's ADU's it's gotta connect to the same
Yeah.
line?
Yeah.
But if you theoretically had 3 ADUs, I'm not even sure if that would be
No, they're gonna be
possible.
separate.
Why, which is, I wanted, why I
Especially
wanted
a
you
10
to
acre
do
lot.
I wonder, you could add the lines that I think.
Could you just upsize the tap of the
Yeah.
principal dwelling unit? I mean, that's what I would do, I think.
But also look at it as, can we look at them as multiple, the same way we do any other
Give
multi-unit?
them the tiered rate.
The same thing as a building that has 4 units,
0.7.
and we just consider them multi-unit because that's kind of what they are. When we go to R2, that's what it is. When we have the Summit fourplexes, that's what it is.
Yeah, you could do
So-
that, I think. I mean, you have a lot of discretion interpreting your own utility code, so.
Say anything over 1 ADU is defined as a multi-unit. Looking up the definition, I don't have it in front of me.
Or over 800 square feet.
If you want to go there, that's good.
Now it's still 100 square feet's the max. Well, it's not, I guess it's not for if your primary is larger, but
Yeah. Is this something that we want to send to the UEB?
I just like their input on that specific issue of multiple ADUs.
So,
Been allowed before, and how they think that. That's the situation.
especially because there's varying sizes. So, but timing wise, this goes to the PCDC.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the UEB meets tomorrow and then not until when?
Just a meeting 2 weeks after that.
Right, if things get a little iffy, I think we're before the board on the next meeting because isn't it skip a week? So maybe we are in. March,
This
no,
is gonna take a.
you meet March 3rd, we're March 5th next. So it would be after the next board.
But this is gonna take a 2-step process for an ordinance. This has to go first reading,
Yep.
second reading anyway,
Yep.
so. We should at least be able to hear from them by second reading.
Okay, so we're okay with going to first reading and then having UEB provided for before second reading?
And what about PCDC then?
Well, yeah, PCDC should,
Keep it on the 24th?
unless, do you see an issue?
No,
with that?
without this information. No, that's fine. Just confirming the schedule.
All right,
You guys just clarify, we should look at service fees too, in addition to tap fees.
Yeah.
okay, so the UEB will look at service fees and tap fees.
On multiple ADUs as well as ADU size.
Yeah, I mean.
Because at some point, the ADU,
So far, the board haven't varied the 800 square foot max.
Correct.
An existing policy, so I don't waive fees on less than 800 feet. So only if we change the maximum size to that. Be an issue with them.
which I think we should,
What do you think we should?
I think we should let people decide, yeah, I mean, no larger than the primary house. But incent them with that being waivers and such for a smaller ADU.
Yeah, and that's one possible recommendation. They might maybe not talk about that.
Yeah, and where's that sweet spot of, is it 800, is it 1,000, is it 650?
I mean, I think the challenge that we could come up against is, say somebody has a 2,500 square foot house and they want to build an ADU that's 2,000 square feet. And then move into the 2,000 square foot house, rent out, make that primary. Rent out the 2,500 square foot house. We could have small lots with two really big houses on them. If we don't limit the ADU size, because it is accessory to the main unit. So I think we need to just think about what we want to do there.
Plus, when you get into a house at 2,500 square feet, you probably have larger kitchens, several bathrooms, and they're using well beyond what a 3/4 inch tub.
Exactly, and that's where I think the UEB can weigh in. I guess there's so many different scenarios and there's so much variability in the size discussion. I think putting a hard cap is. No.
What about a percentage of the primary dwelling? Attorney Tippman, do you know of any municipalities that do that?
I do not, because we're kind of going into uncharted waters here, I think. You know, we're ahead of the curve on a lot of this. I can look, but I haven't heard of anybody or seen anything.
My problem with the larger units, the larger the unit is, the more it's gonna rent for, and then it's the
Right.
affordability for private ADUs.
Right, and I agree, but there's different circumstances somebody may have in the building. So if we can incent smaller ones somehow through waivers and fees.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that ADUs are not meant to be a tool to build wealth. They're a tool to provide housing.
And I believe we can build a 1 bedroom for about 600 or 700 square feet, is that right? Over on Evans, I'm trying to remember how big they are,
600.
600.
You can make them small.
So 800 is pretty reasonable.
800 is reasonable for a 2 bedroom unit.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
So you could build a 2 bedroom ADU with maybe 800 square feet.
absolutely.
Okay, I'm just trying to visualize how big that is. Okay. So that feels comfortable.
And Brendan, just to be clear, there's nothing in the law that prevents us from having a maximum ADU size. correct?
Yeah, the minimum maximum, if you will, I think is 800 square feet. But you can put any other cap on it you want. As long as it's 800 feet or greater.
Agreed. Yeah, the smallest maximum you can have is 800 square feet.
Oh, the smallest max.
Yeah, so you could have a 1,000 square feet, limitation if you wanted to.
My question before was, should we extend it to 1,000? And if you think you can build a 2 bedroom that is 800 square feet.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that 800 is the right maximum at all. I'm just,
That's what we've had up until this point, correct, is 800.
mhm.
I'm sure there's a reason why the previous board decided on 800 square feet.
It was because of the main house
Oh,
and
right,
the
that's
smaller
what it is.
house using 1 unit of water.
And also it had an affordability, even back then, an affordability component, they wanted to not. Rather than doing rent control.
Yeah.
How much can
Yeah.
you charge for an 800 square foot?
Sure.
versus-
Yeah, I hear that for sure.
Well, that one seems to be still out there.
Yeah, what do you think, trustee Donnelly?
Well, I think it shouldn't be much bigger than 800 square feet. But I don't know enough. If you can get 2 bedrooms and 800 square feet. Maybe that should be size.
I can say I've had apartments that were 2 bedrooms that were smaller than 800 square feet, so you can do it.
I'm trying to remember what a 2 bedroom is at the Lions Valley townhomes. Do you remember what the square footage is for a 2 bedroom? Like
Those are like 1,200.
the townhomes are?
Oh, townhomes. I don't remember. Yes, I do.
900?
960 or something.
966.
960.
I know that's ringing, I know, that's what I'm trying to think, like.
Those are 2 bedrooms. One bath.
Or can when we talk about utilities and the number of bathrooms and bigger kitchens, can we limit the size by number of bedrooms? Is that legal?
There's nothing in the statute about that. There's
Or
nothing,
bathrooms.
yeah, there's nothing about bathrooms. I think the bathrooms is probably a better one because there is explicit language saying you can regulate based on utilities. And so I think there's a correlation in the number of bathrooms, how much, water use there's going to be. And so that may be a valid reason to regulate, but there's nothing that authorizes at least, bedroom regulation.
And this doesn't pertain to basement ADUs, correct? The basements have no limitation.
No, this is detached.
Just detached.
Yep. Yeah, in section 4, these size limitations shall not apply to ADUs located in a basement for which there is no size limit.
Well, we have to make a decision, you guys, because something has to go into the ordinance.
I'm in favor of keeping it at 800 feet where it's been for 8 or 9 years now.
Well, we haven't, I would agree with that, but as you pointed out before, we haven't seen the number of ADU applications that we've wanted to see, and I wonder if making them a little bigger might help.
I wouldn't make that affordability trade-off. Since we don't regulate rents. You make them more rent's gonna be charged and purpose of it. What was it? Purpose. Like waiving the back fees and bringing 80%. I don't think what words we could without going through. It's all administrative difficulties and that probably can't do it as a statutory town anyway.
No, we cannot.
So that's a very crude affordability measure, but I think it's important.
But I would suggest, a large number of ADUs are built for family use. So there may be different uses, and then eventually that could convert into, open market rentals. So, and that's why I'm just not a big fan of putting too much of a cap on it. Because I agree, I think we want to keep it affordable, but incent people with care versus putting a hard cap on there in the code.
Well, and I'm curious, in response to what Trustee Browning was saying, do you think that it would make a huge difference in the rental cost to go from 800 to 1,000 square feet, like that extra 200 square feet? Do you think that's gonna make a huge difference in affordability?
I think it would. Or, larger the space you're in, the more rent you're gonna pay in general.
Sure.
Particularly for newly constructed things.
I asked Director Kaplan, do you remember the ADU that was recently built here? We had, I think his name was Harold, maybe, who came in front of the trustees. Remember how big his ADU was? Like, it must have been 800 if
I
that's.
thought it was, right, that's what I was gonna say, I thought it was, right, it's up to 800.
And that was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, do you remember?
I do.
I'm okay to stick with 800 square feet for the affordability argument.
I would like to move to 1,000 square feet. Give people better opportunity, but that's me. Trustee Bellman?
I think I'm.
Trustee Hamrick?
In spirit of compromise, I'd go with 1,000.
Well, I think we're outnumbered, but I appreciate it. Appreciate that being alone walking that walk.
You may get input during your public hearing.
Yeah, we'll get input from the PCDC, we'll get input from UED, we'll get input during the public
Yeah.
hearing, but for the initial
To
ordinance.
present something, we need a number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else am I missing that was unclear from the workshop? Randy?
I have, just if you want to add the word legal off-street parking.
Sure.
Or something about alleys and off-street parking.
Yeah.
And that was all I had for notes.
Okay.
Unless Brandon.
The other one is the sunset of the
Sunset.
regulations for tiny homes.
But just to be clear, the state law does not require a parking space, correct?
So the state law does not require a parking space, but it allows us to regulate a parking space under very certain conditions. And so what I've included in the draft was basically what the state law says you can do, which is you can, create or designate one off-street parking space for the ADU, if that zoning district requires parking. And so if you're like commercial downtown, even though there wouldn't be an ADU there, you may not have to provide off-street parking for that.
So the sunset clause. Let me reopen this again.
Why do we need a sunset clause in our ADs? Because our AD ordinance now dates from what, 2017?
This is just the tiny home.
Just the tiny home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it exists currently in the tiny home ordinance. And so I think while we're making all these other changes, the tiny home thing based on, this ADU generally update, do you just want to do away with the sunset rather than renewing it every 5 years?
I would.
I would too. I
I
think-
can't recall why that was put in there.
I know, because we were doing a first of a kind ordinance and we didn't know what was gonna happen, and we didn't know we might have 20 of them changing neighborhoods, and so we wanted to look at it as an experiment for 5 years and see if it worked or not. Okay. Turned out, we had the opposite problem of having enough of them. I don't think it needs a sunset. I think it was really just because it was a brand new type of ordinance that we kind of crafted from scratch, and we wanted to flag it for review in 5 years.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, and I think also, if I recall, the fire department had some concerns about how to respond in a tiny home. They said they can't even get in the door in their full gear. So it was just kind of it was this all very new. And so it was to revisit if there were any concerns.
Well, and given the vast amount of tiny homes and ADUs that we have now.
So remove sunset clause.
Yeah, I think remove the sunset clause.
Done.
Thank you. All right. So, then can we move on to the 517 West Main proposal? So, I'm not sure what the direction staff is looking for might be, because I don't think they've had any initial meetings with you all to talk about subdivision or.
I think they had a meeting with, Planner Bowen to just say what would be the mechanism we'd use, and it came out as PUD. And, also talked with him about how to better streamline that process, so it didn't take, like Riverbend took, is that 1.5 or 2 years for that?
A long
PUD?
time, yeah.
So just how to streamline, but they haven't met with current stuff. So, I think it's not even necessarily to us. I just think they wanted to know if this was, before they invest time and money in this, is this a concept that sounds like something you would like to take this housing opportunity because it's arisen? Or is it not something you have an interest in? Looking at.
Trustee Dolan?
I would say yes.
Trustee Browning?
I'd say yes too. We have one apartment complex of any size in the town of Lyons. And the small townhomes we have that are in like 2 different small complexes have mushroomed in value to them. So whether it's market rate or some type of affordable, I don't presume to know the market demand for either of those kind of defer to the components in that. It's their profitability and marketing to figure out. But I think Lyons has a shortage of apartments and small apartments. So in general, obviously specifics, I'm still locked down. I just encourage them to go forward.
I'm absolutely in favor of this project. Whatever we can do to assist them or help, I'm not sure what the impact fees are. I don't know what this is going to cost us. But I know that we do have a housing shortage, and I feel like this will meet the need, at least for workforce housing.
Yeah, I'm supportive. I think it's a good concept, and we gotta work through the details, and so I think it's a good idea.
And I do too, and I think to the extent that we can streamline the process for them, that would be great.
One question is, Aaron, Longmont has confirmed that if they decide to shoot for the attainable housing level, Like Macintosh shares are gonna be usable for attainable housing as well as.
Yeah, and they have a draft just to see, before I brought it to you, I wanted to see if they would actually support something. So I'm meeting with them, I think it's next week, they finally went to their council. I think that part is okay, there are the additional questions to them, which are concerning, I think, to Longmont, it's been a little while, but yes. I think they're fine with the attainable housing change. Did realize we may be looking at some concerns for the ADUs. If we're gonna charge a tap fee in Longmont, are they getting a portion of that when we're not? So another issue on ADUs in Longmont.
Okay, great.
Are there any other comments you want to go back to them as in regard to, a mixture of rental for sale that anybody here has opinions about it? I know it's more of a market study for them and that's their decision, but does anybody have any comments that they want us to make sure we get back to them?
I would love to see mixture. I think we need more ownership opportunities. We need ways for people to get their foot in the door and have some stability. I don't know whether that's economically feasible, and if they can't do it,
Yeah.
if it's not economically feasible, I would still 100% support apartments.
I agree, and I've heard some echoes. One of them, a commissioner on the Housing and Human Services who lives at Lions Valley Townhomes was telling me about other tenants also trying to find an affordable way to home ownership in Lions, and how do we get there? And I was hoping to talk to Trustee Delman more about a program you might know more about, so I'd like to do that at some point, but I think we need to, find a way to work towards making home ownership more affordable for people wanting like entry level homes. Because right now, a home at $875,000 is not entry level, like that's not, nobody can buy their first home for $875,000, it's just not, I don't know how that happens. My first home was 125,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
That's 100,000 American. So. just saying.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think somehow we should work with work with them to come up with markets, some kind of survey to get a really good grasp of what the demands are, what the needs are. Because I think from Lions Valley Townhomes, maybe it missed the mark, I don't know, but I think it would be good to understand what's and then also get into somehow understanding the economics of this from an affordable, big A, attainable, what are those trade-offs? What's the demand side of it? Because I think this 24 to 27 units, that's significant. That has a huge impact on this town. So I think we all need to work together, not just say go off and do your market studies, but somehow engage the case, human housing and human services, just put everybody's head together to see how can we come up with the best mix. Because also the one gentleman mentioned, from if it's owner occupied, you gotta have scale to have the management company and if it's rentals. So I was like, well, can we share management companies across a couple different companies in town?
Well, and that's.
So anyway, come up with some creative ways, because I do think a mix would be great, but the economics are probably against us, but it'd be good for us to understand those trade-offs, so we can do a better job of planning.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point, which is the management company, because as we've seen, some are great and some are not. And so I'd be curious to know just what their plans or philosophies are, because they're the builders, right? Studio
They
Shuttle
manage
builders.
as well. They have a management arm.
Oh, they do.
Dutch Brothers Company.
Dutch Brothers?
That's Mountain.
Dutch
Dutch Mountain, that's the
Mountain.
management.
There's, yeah, somehow,
Okay, I somehow missed that was the
somehow
management.
that's all connected, but it sounds like they've started a new wing. They
So
were
let's just
calling
find
it
out.
Studio Home.
Studio, I
something?
thought that was.
That was for
Yeah.
commercial or something.
Yeah.
Or something, but.
Yeah.
Well,
Studio.
I'm just curious to know how they would do that.
I just think this could be a good opportunity for us as the town to work together with private enterprise, to figure out what's the right mix and make sure we get everybody's, do this a smart way.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
right.
Before the next time, can we request a short break?
You betcha.
As I think it's gonna take a bit to do the next one, so.
Yeah, let's take 5.
Which is the different kind.
Oh, are you? All right, we are back. Thank you. Okay, so discussion direction to staff on the Margaret Russell property, 0 Stickney Street. Brandon?
No, it's gonna be me first, do you think? Yeah.
Okay.
I was contacted by the Boulder County Assessor's Office. Inquiring about, a parcel of land at what they call 0 Stickney Street. So the Russells own several properties on the north side of town, so there's been a little confusion about which one we're talking about. I did attach in the memo, there is a map of this particular piece that we are referring to. It's a small, thin piece at the east end of Stickney. Between Stickney and Long Peak, I guess. And the assessor had been in touch with the estate of Margaret Russell. The estate had thought that Margaret had deeded this to the town in 2008. And apparently, upon a notification of their taxes being due again, realized that it had not been. So they did some research. And they apparently found a copy of a quitclaim deed, transferring it to the town, but it never got recorded. So, not knowing the details of their estate, somehow those taxes have been paid since then, except for this year. And they are now, the estate is wanting to clear the title on the property and to follow their mother's wishes or their family's wishes, they want to deed it to the town. And they want to deed it at the cost of the taxes this year. $700, I think. Looking at the property, we do have an abandoned sewer pipe that runs through this property. We also have an electric line buried undergrounded on this property, and there's a pretty well-used social trail that crosses this lot as well. The board, if you recall, we did have the adjacent neighbor to the west come in. I don't remember how long ago that was. A year and a half ago, maybe. Lana Cinnamon came in front of the board and expressed that they had been maintaining this parcel for a long time. And I think the attorney's prepared to talk about adverse possession. I think that's the word she used.
Yeah,
Because they have an interest in this parcel as well. They currently utilize it on the west side and have been maintaining it.
Also the road. They want to do the portion of the property.
Yeah, I said that, the west side. So before this moved forward, I thought we should bring it to the board to see if, you know, there's an interest. This is very similar to Keith Bell's situation with those 3 lots in Lions Valley Park. He thought he had deeded it. It wasn't until after he passed that they realized he hadn't, and they wanted to continue to pursue that. So, Attorney Dittman, I'd asked him to be prepared to discuss the legal aspects of this. I also included in my memo, you can see the original 1886 Nortonville plat. There is something called, this is kind of confusing because Nortonville was numbered west to east, first, second, third, fourth, and Lyons was numbered east to west, first, second, third, fourth. So when we're talking 4th Street in Nortonville, that's actually First Street in Lyons. I know it gets very complex, but Dolores and I have worked with this enough that if they use old addresses, you have to know which community they were talking about. Then in the 1929 plat, you see that it says it may show an alley You can see it's not the typical width of a street in town. But it's definitely got a line there, but it's not marked as anything. And then the current mapping of the assessor's office is the last visual that shows this parcel, the full length plus some. And it is listed as a separate parcel of property. It's not an alley or a right of way, or it is a parcel now. So probably lots of missing gaps over those 130 years, more than that, 140. But this is the current situation. I have communicated with the daughter who's in charge of the estate apparently. And she said, we want to deed it to the town. That's our preference. That's the part I know. Then Brandon, I don't know if you want to respond at all to, you all received a communication from Lana and Ken Cinnamon, since the packet went out. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Brandon.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I think it's important to know. I mean, I think it's important to note generally there's just a lot of disputed facts over what is going on with this property. But I think what is clear is at least for some time, the Russells have been paying the property taxes. I think in the satellite imagery, you can clearly see there's multiple cars being parked up and down, this area. And what's disputed is to what extent and for how long have the Cinnamons been on this a small portion of this property, I should point out. But that's and the reason why it's important is due to this concept of adverse possession, which basically says if I am a person that's using property adversely to the real owner, that I can actually acquire that property from them. And there's a number of conditions that have to be met before you have a claim of adverse possession. And that means 18 years of open, notorious, and exclusive is important here, use of that property in order to even have a claim of adverse possession. And in Colorado in 2008, we made the laws significantly more complicated or more difficult for a possessor to claim it and in various ways. And one of the first things is I think is important in this case is that just because you've adverse possessed the property doesn't mean you own it. You have to go to court in Colorado on a quiet title action and make the claim of adverse possession and prove it by clear and convincing evidence. There's a very high standard to prove that I adversely possess this property. In addition, the law says now that if you are successful, you have to pay the person who's claiming ownership of the property 18 years of back taxes, the value of the property, plus interest for 18 years. And so for any party claiming adverse possession, one, it's a really steep hill to climb. And two, it's not a cheap proposition, by design now, as a way to kind of discourage this behavior. And this is all tied up in a case about a judge in Boulder who was able to use adverse possession to acquire property from an unknowing neighbor. And that's the reason why they made it more difficult. But that's the concept of adverse possession here. But what I would say is that there's a lot of dispute over, of course, as you've seen, this property. And what that does, it creates, potentially a cloud of title. And so the question is, as the sentiments talk about, is a quick claim deed enough? Because all that gives you is I give you what I have, which could be nothing. And other options are to get, title insurance, to require a different kind of deed, which I think probably that Russells would be against. And so those are the various kind of ownership issues at play here. But I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But it is something that's at play. Not that I think it could be successful, but it's an issue.
So I'm gonna lead off the questions here because I know there's a question about the Cinnamon property, and also I know from walking there every day that the Janics also tend the property that's included in this strip, if I'm reading the map right.
I don't know that. How do you spell that name?
Eric and Wanda.
Oh, they live over on,
They live on 214. At the top of the curve.
Okay.
So I imagine if they're not aware of this, they have an interest in being there. This,
Over half of that lot, abuts their property.
well,
Probably
and if you walk
2/3.
by there, they treat that property as if it is theirs. So, yeah, I have an idea, but I'm gonna hold it until later.
I got a
Yeah.
Did everybody get an email from Jim
This
Curtis?
one?
Yeah,
I saw that.
They're wrong.
Yeah.
Jim's email also suggested that there's a water line.
Yeah, come what? For the perpendicular through there, the water line runs through the sewer. I call it alley, they call it Seward Street. But where Seward, I call it Seward Alley, they call it Seward Street. Right, the water line runs through there and then across that property and up between we actually have a little parcel, the outlot, the Mountain View. So there is the water line running up there. There are also active sewer lines that come down to the bottom of that. And if the active sewer does cross it horizontally, we then have the inactive abandoned, we don't use it, coming off of Long's Peak sewer. Coming down there, and the stormwater, there's some stormwater work down at the bottom of that, as well as the electric utility poles that are in that and the road.
Is there any concern from the abandoned sewer line of any kind of contamination, environmental problem? It's long ago.
Now, when we redid Long's Peak, we stopped using that section of pipe coming down, and now that goes down the road underneath the road. So
It was abandoned when we redid Long's Peak a couple of years ago. I guess I'm not sure who this is for, is there any reason right now that the town can't access either the road or the utilities that are there? I mean, have restricted easements or is there any issue?
I think it's pretty
Stop
clear.
it.
Oh, sorry, continue.
No,
I think it's-
basically, been no issue, and I would say it's a prescriptive easement from being there, however.
Yeah.
It's all.
I think without a doubt, there's prescriptive easements there at the very least.
I guess that was my next question is kind of, why is ownership necessary? As far as the town is concerned.
I saw like.
What are the benefits of ownership compared to what's there right now? I guess for the town.
I don't know what a different owner would do with the property. The current owner we know hasn't done anything and has left it thinking it was already the town's property. I don't know what, being the cinnamon flutter, what, if they're claiming the whole property and are they going to maintain the road then also, or are they just gonna take their one, do they just want the one corner that they use? They use about maybe 25%. So if they're trying to claim that entire piece of property, I don't know, I'd have to know what they would wanna do.
Victoria?
I think probably one of the most, I mean, other than the utilities easements are that run through it. But I think it's this social trail.
Agreed.
If you get an owner that doesn't want that, they could fence it, gate it, whatever. So it's whether or not you, instead of people trespassing over this parcel, that's privately owned, is this something we want? I think a letter from Jim Kerr also mentioned that, you know, if absolutely necessary, you could use it as an egress in an emergency. And that's not something, you know, we would want to advertise, but if the fire department needed to get up there, they could. Or you could make it such that they could, but, I think that's for the folks that do use it and hike through it, they wouldn't be trespassing.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say, spending quite a bit of time there that, one of the benefits I think to the town having it is fire mitigation. You know, it is so overgrown up there on the east side of that street and people leave all kinds of branches and and detritus there. So I think being able to do some fire mitigation there and clean it up would be really beneficial. Also, I wonder, you know, is it possible to, come to some sort of agreement where we, carve out pieces of this property and come to an agreement with the Cinnamons or the Janix about, you know, keeping what they believe is their land and also maintaining access to that social trail and being able to do fire mitigation.
Sure. I mean, if they're willing to come to an agreement, right?
Yeah.
What would a negative be in the town of Lena?
Maintenance, the cost of maintenance, when we already know it's, you know, it's hard to maintain what we have. Other than that, do you know any other negatives?
No, I said we already do at least the utility, the road. We have to trim branches for.
But again, that could be a positive, because then we do control the mitigation. Or we don't.
Don't we already, use maintenance along there for snow removal and that kind of thing?
The road.
Just around the curve
Just
on the
around
road.
Yeah, and honestly, it's really, it's secondary. Because there's not a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I think, you know, the negative would be inserting ourselves into this dispute, you know, which is personal and lengthy, it sounds like, between these parties. And so that's just the only real negative that I see, at least.
Maybe we could have like an encroachment if we owned it. You could have an encroachment agreement with those owners.
Yep.
Which is a pretty simple process internally. And basically that just says, unless there comes a time where we need this, you're welcome to continue to use it as you are. It just gets documented so that they don't think they own it, but they're actually just using it. And that's a very simple one-pager document that's done administratively.
Well, maybe see if there's an interest in.
And would that transfer with the success of the homeowners?
No, I think the way that's written is the new owner has to enter one, so the agreement is with them.
Okay.
But we have lots of people, have fences or gardens or whatever in the public right of way, because as we know, in parts of town, the right of way is so wide, it actually goes up to people's front doors.
Yeah.
So they have encroachment permits to have their personal, to use it, until a point where the town may need it.
Did the town pave the road all the way up to the top of this property? It's asphalt. Right?
Up to the top of the.
Kind of their driveway.
At the top, I think they did.
Or maybe their drive, I don't know if we did the driveway.
I don't know that either. Not that I'm aware
Yeah,
of.
I wasn't sure how far the town.
Yeah.
I don't think we plow up there.
No.
And, you know, I have seen over the years, some attempts to block access to the social trail from there.
Signs and parking vehicles and things there, so people can. Thoughts for staff?
Yeah, I have a thought. I think it's in the town's best interest to obtain this property. And see about an encroachment permit in that case for current owners. I think it's important to have access to the any utilities below that road. I think it's important to continue to maintain that road, and I think it's important to maintain access to the social trail. Trustee Hammer?
Yeah, I agree. I think what the administrator said, did come up with some kind of compromise. The town owns it, allows them to use it. I don't know why they care to own it. And it sounds from a legal perspective, really don't have much spaces. So. But, and looking at this property, I mean, it abuts those two other properties, so allow them to use part of that. You know, come to some kind of agreement where the town always has,
But then we don't,
yeah.
so we would, okay.
I don't know, having it the other way around probably wouldn't work. So.
Trustee Browning?
I'm conflicted on this one. probably the minority on this viewpoint about social trails. We've talked about this in other contexts too, including like the legislative up there, but I'm seeing a pattern or precedent maybe of the town taking action and actually taking ownership of property in order to preserve access to social trails. And why isn't that a good thing? This town for its size, population wise and resources wise, owns more parks and open space property than it can afford to pay for them. It's a serious problem. And with social trails, a lot of places are running down. And the more that we acquire property to preserve existing social trails, we're expanding our property environment. In my view, we should be finding ways to reduce some of our property. That's why I've been pushing to sell the Apple Valley Water Treatment Plant, surplus property, we don't need it. Or they're the minority, I agree, I voted first list the 2 lots on part of Fort for sale. I think the town's overhead and upkeep relates to a fairly significant degree to how much property we own, including parks and open space property. I'm concerned about that. I also had a concern about getting involved in title litigation, as Attorney Dittman mentioned. I don't think our risk here is that great based on the attorney's advice that I got, the facts as I think back. And I looked today, and although I didn't know that until now that the Russell family had actually paid the taxes until recently. I looked back 2013, they paid them. 2 years before that, Beal did. Maybe somebody like Beal's and property tax limits or something and paid them. So that 2013 is 12 years ago at most. So I don't think we have an 18-year issue. Somebody was paying the taxes then and thought it was their property. So to me, it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know. Clearly, the majority favors this, so I'll go with the majority on this. But I have reservations about us continuing to add that property that the town has to pay for the preserve. I'm not sure that's the policy. It's a policy.
Should.
And are you both okay with an encroachment agreement?
Yes.
You,
Yeah.
well, we talked ownership and.
Yeah, I
and
think we should,
encroachment.
yes, I think we should accept it, and I think we should do the encroachment agreements. I would like to, I know the Cinnamons wrote to us, but I'd like to be sure that the other property owners are aware of this too. I think they might be out of town.
So the direction would be to contact the family and let them know that we would be interested in accepting this deed to the property. And then work with the neighbors.
Anyone who borders that property could potentially request an encroachment if they
Sure.
want to do the other properties, if they wanted to maintain that for whatever reason could.
They should request it, yeah.
There's 4, you know, just so everyone.
And they haven't been maintained, so.
Is the
All
board
right.
is the board okay with a quick claim deed on this? I mean, again, there's risk in that, since there is this dispute over title. It turns out that, the Russells didn't have valid title to this property, then it could result in future issues.
But I'm okay with it.
What's the other option?
Other options, you take out a title insurance policy on it, or you demand a different type of deed that actually has some assurances behind it.
That would be another expense of acquiring the property, and I don't. That's for the town funds. I think the risk is lower than I initially thought of any kind of title challenge.
I'm
Yep.
okay with the quick claim deed.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. All right, let's move on to trustee reports. Trustee Dominic.
So PRC met and one of the main things is they delayed whether to turn the Stacy parcel into a park until next month. They want to see, look more into what the costs would be down turning it into a park.
Okay.
And I think that's about it.
UED met on February 5th. Discussed to some degree the Longmont electrical service territory that, the immediate issue was the Tamborella property on the eastern corridor, which I think there's an issue about that, probably more since then, that they. Questions, how much do you pay Longmont for the territory? And I think they told on that property, they decided, even though they normally go back 10 years and that they haven't been used in the last 10 years as a water treatment plant. They wanted to go back a couple more years and base the lost revenue on when they had last operated it as a water treatment plant. I don't know if that's changed since then.
I haven't heard back, but they did say they would review that.
Which would, of course, up the cost, so which would be probably paid by Tamborella, so there are still issues with transfers and Longmont electric service territory. A lot of discussion of mean and why their wholesale electric rates are going up 9%. That's due to some solar projects and some transmission costs and a lot of other things. The preliminary discussion will continue to discuss. It's on their agenda for tomorrow's meeting, whether that needs to reflect, whether that needs to translate into an electric rate increase for the town or not. As in, it's been since, I think, 2016, since the town has raised its electric rates. Even though means rates have gone up, and means rates keep going up, how come we're not raising ours? Well, each year there's like unspent funds in the budget, as there are in most funds. And there may be enough unspent funds in the 2024 budget to cover the 2025 electric rate increases, the wholesale rate increases. So you would have to raise rates and the fund can handle it. But if you do that year after year after year, you don't build up your fund balance to take on big projects the way it would be if you made an adjustment each time you adjusted rates. So the UEB doesn't have a recommendation on that yet. They're going to be talking about it again tomorrow, but just know that there was a 9% wholesale electric increase. And we haven't raised our rates in a while, and whether we should now, even if we've got funds, we can find in excess funds in the electric fund to cover it. Should we at some point build the fund balance, make that increase? We'll be discussing that and making a recommendation soon. And the mean rate increase stays effective.
I don't have anything to report. The Housing and Human Services Commission gave an update tonight by the chair, and I wasn't able to make it to the rest of the discussion. So I'm sure. Thank you for being there. You bet. Trustee Hammer.
Sustainable Futures Commission met last Thursday. We had Jim Kerr come talk about time use. Because he had presented that months ago, and there were some concerns from the SFC, and so he came to address some of those concerns. Then we talked about the town sustainability grant. There's 5,000 for composting, so there's discussion about how best to utilize that. And then one of the focuses of the near-term focus of SFC is to create a lot of compelling content for the website and really refresh their portion of the website. Hopefully drive a lot more eyeballs to it.
Right. Thank you. PCDC met, talked about occupancy limits, rezoning the town on lots, which we'll see here very shortly. Talked about how to move forward with the comp plan review. And also heard the presentation from 517 Main. Barney officially made his announcement that he is going to be resigning from the PCDC
We're extremely sorry to lose him and his vast knowledge.
But he will stay until a replacement.
But he will stay until there is a replacement. So, if someone has an interest.
He's on the ERA, he's on the ERA.
He said he will stay on the URS.
Yep, he will stay there and consider BOing.
Yeah, he'll
Since
consider.
they meet
Board
so
of Adjustments.
frequently, Board of Adjustments and Urban Renewal.
He's, you know, we are a victim of his success with the Lions community here. And then Dr. Cog is tomorrow evening. That ought to be interesting. The invitation's open always to come, and I was mentioning to Trustee Browning, since he's my Dr. Cog alternate, that it's also, you can also watch it online if you have an interest. You can't be counted as present unless you're there in person or you make arrangements in advance, but anybody can watch it online. I will be going to Washington DC next month for the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference. And that is an opportunity to get FaceTime with our senators and with the congressmen. Really good opportunity to ask for congressionally directed spending for the wastewater treatment plant. And, so I plan to take full advantage of Pill Day there and everything else at National League of Cities. And then finally, a resident made me aware that she saw some, white supremacist alt-right stickers on public property in town. I was really glad that she made me aware of that. So I made staff aware and consequently the sheriff. And so folks are gonna be on the lookout for those. I would encourage anybody, if you see anything of the sort, take a picture of it first before you take it down, and then let staff know. And I reported it to the Anti-Defamation League and to Michael Doherty's office, as they track stuff like that as well. So if you see it, take a picture and send it on so that we have documentation. But I haven't heard of any additional defacement of public property.
Legal question from the attorney on that. If we see a sticker from the other side of the spectrum, same thing?
I mean, people, the town should,
That'd be hard to define these days, but.
yeah.
On public property, we
On
have the
public
ability to
property.
remove anything.
In public
that-
property, the town should be taking down everything, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of taking down left versus right, that's a personal decision for people.
Yeah, and it's left versus right is very, very different from what was actually posted.
Yep.
Just so you know. Okay. Summary of action items, please.
At that number one, the HHSC is to follow up on the waiting list at Summit with Mr. Paul Capps. Number two, staff is to follow up on evacuation plans for Walt South, Bloomfield, and the town of Lyons. Number three, Finance Director Isom is to follow up on what is management override and controls for audit for next packet. Item four, ADU amendments, and I have several, Brandon, I don't know if I caught them all. No owner occupancy requirement. Next I have, if more.
I got them all, Dolores, if you don't want to
Okay,
go.
good, I tried to keep up. Next, I have, the board was in support of the 517 West Main housing proposal, in support of a mixture of rental and ownership. See how the town can collaborate with commissions, community, and a potential survey to see what the residents would like. Next, I have, staff was directed to work with the family to accept the quitclaim deed from the Russell property and meet with adjoining neighbors on encroachment permits. And that's why.
I have just follow up. How do we want to follow up with the questions and the information from HHSC? Like, should that be a workshop with the board? They had several questions they wanted answered, so.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna want staff input on their suggested changes to the code and what sort of cascade effect that might have.
Yeah, and then did you have? Oh, that's ADU, going to the UEB for service fees.
Got all those, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and follow up with Boulder County on evacuation plans for.
Yeah, I got that
Did we get that? Great. Brandon?
Yeah, anything else? I already made all the ADU changes, so we'll get that in front of PCDC.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Good
Good
night.
night.
It's in your mailbox.
Oh, it is.
It's supposed to be